Welcome back to the Geometric View, episode 67, season 6. Today we have a great discussion about myriad topics all over the board, and futurism. Why should we pump more carbon into the atmosphere? MIMS, everything. It's all memetics on all scales. Looks like the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo is turning out to be great with big name performers.
I'm Buddy James, your host.
The link is in the show notes below.
Let's get into the circuit.
We greatly appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
It's good for the lungs. Moistens them.
Apparently, it's good for a lot of things.
That's true.
My Irish pal, he had really bad gallstones, and of course they weren't getting treated off the mid doctor profession. So he took some advice off an old witch auntie of his, and what it was is all you can eat for the next 3 days is apples, and all you can drink is apple juice. And after 3 days of that, his guts had turned to milk, of course. But he'd completely kind of cleansed himself out with this apple. But next thing he knows, he started peeing, and these gallstones were popping out like kidney beans, he said. And they looked a bit like kidney beans. And he popped about 50 of them out 3 days later. So I don't think they do this on the National Health Service. But, it's well worth keeping in touch with some of these old wives' tales,
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
So that cured him. And that's normally quite a painful operation that people go through to get shut of those.
You mean of stones? Yes.
Yeah, so that's the way to do it. Melt them with some apple juice.
But I'm doing it for the what do you call the moistening, properties.
Yeah, totally. It's just very good for you. Well, me and Murphy, he's planting 1,000 apple trees up on his land this year. 1,000. We've already got them. They're already nurseryed. So there's 1,000 to go up there, and so I'm working on the wall right now. And then we can put fences up and get it secure. And happy days. So that's my mission. And I'm getting paid for it. And I'll be able to live up there as well. So
that's good. What I was going to say was that I feel a little out of sorts. It's like I'm having to catch up with a lot of things that were in my life very consistently for months or even over a year. And being sick, I don't know if it's the property of the condition or it's something else that goes on, but what's really weird is it feels like it's like exercising for the first time in a long time. It's just a strange feeling that I'm feeling, and it reminds me of today's topic, which is the crossing point, the inflection that we're all feeling as we head into this magnetic reversal. Other things are crossing. How much of that is the agenda? How much of that is, people participating in just this magnetic change? Obviously, the climate's changing. People don't seem to understand the why of that, which is kind of funny. But I just think it's a really interesting topic. This inflection, this pole reversal, whatever you want to call it. All these crossing points happening. And I wish Robert were here, because he's the one who brought up about the magnetic field changing people's minds, changing how they think, what they think is acceptable behavior versus before. And I'm interested to hear your all's thoughts on this, especially, I don't take this the wrong way, but you're out like you're digging and putting stones up, right?
Yeah.
There's probably more in common between us and ants than we think. And they have done lots of studies where they alter the fields around the people or around the ants or other bugs, and then they change their behavior, right? And Buddy has talked about several times, and I've confirmed this, the use of sound to make the gnats move this way, move that way. How much of this could be either the New World Order taking advantage of the time, or the government actually using magnetics, or is it just all happening together in synchronous, like some kind of giant quantum soup? I'm interested to hear your all's thoughts about the inversion of things and how it's all altering and how it's accelerating. Yeah, that's the topic. So, Teddy, why don't you mute for a second, and then you'll pick up what the conversation is about.
Yeah, okay, Ramone. Well, as far as I can see, crossing, the first thing that sprang to mind when you mentioned, the magnetic force and crossing points was that the dowsers in this country, these guys who think they're sensitive to magnetic fields, which I'm sure they are, they seem to think that the ancient stoneworks and monuments and churches and all the man-made mounds, graves, whatever they happen to be, they seem to sit on these magnetic crossing points where you've got a north-south geodesic current and east-west ones, vaguely east-west ones, let's say. And where these cross over, you seem to have a specific energy which the ancients were quite aware of. Well, that's the first point. That's my first point about it. As far as changing biology's moods with varying electromagnetic fields, I think that's almost, well, that's there's no doubt in my mind about that is in effect. No doubt in my mind. To the extent that some people actually get very gravely ill if they're exposed to any kind of some various wavelengths, especially if they live under high tension power cables. Cancers happen. So yes, human beings are directly physically affected. Psychologically, I would also say just about without any doubt in my mind, because all these crackpot government organisations like on Russell Square, MI5, and they were playing with obviously the music industry and these various resonances that they were playing with for different sort of control effects. So that's how it started, and then of course they started to realise that they could pump sounds directly into your brain and bypass your ears just by using certain microwave wavelengths. So people thought they were listening to God when in fact they were listening to some spook putting thoughts into their heads. Now this is a phenomenon, and it works. Simple as that. And so other forms of brainwashing, all the garbled information, just tons and tons of it, until you're so sick of it that you disengage. And that's what's keeping a lot of these politicians in power now, because they're just firing out garbage, and people just disengage with all the parties. To all our, to all our pain, future pain. So yeah, I'm sure the powers that be are very aware of and look at all the investment into 5G at the moment. Wow, straight into your face. Every part of your life, So yeah, electricity's these pulse wavelengths. We don't know how it affects biology. We know that it disrupts the navigation systems of insects, just for a start. We don't know the extent of the damage that it's going to cause yet. It'll probably be as bad as shit. Excuse me. Right. Oh, sorry, I just got interrupted there. Bloody hell. And so. And so yeah, just totally every aspect of our lives is just about governed by this, and I'm sure the powers that be are well aware, although they're stupid people and they're in no position to control anything. In fact, it's all going down the plug hole at the moment, as far as these people are concerned. So I don't think that. So I think they'd all take the opportunity to press the button, if it could be covered up by an EMF, a big EMF event. That's my attitude towards it, anyway, Ramone.
Fair enough. How much do you think that the transsexual thing is the reversal of poles?
I've never considered that at all.
But it is a little bit coincidental, don't you think? Like, as it accelerates, I mean, the numbers are pretty high, right? Even if some are just kind of experimenting, like in their mind, I mean, the numbers are really, really high.
Well, there is a level of encouragement going on, I think.
Well, yeah.
And of course, people are aware of these possibilities at an early age now. When of course, when I was that age, I was sat there holding hands with my girlfriend and giving her little daisies and things like that. Not thinking about changing gender or anything. But maybe some people do.
You didn't think about it. Maybe the environment was not the same. You see what you get what I'm getting at here?
This is brainwashing. Yeah. Brainwashing. I don't think it has anything to do with like the environment changing.
Well, you can dismiss it out of hand, but the elites absolutely know of this reconnecting event. And I don't think that you can dismiss things. I don't think in a synchronistic universe that we can just dismiss things. I think that we have to really seriously consider the possibility that there is a major inflection happening right at this very moment. I mean, if we don't, we're still going to be affected by it, but then we're just without knowledge, which I don't think is really any kind of scientific way to exist.
Well, I certainly think it's worth looking at, but I mean, like I say, you can just list the work going on with microwaves, which biology is susceptible to. It's just there's just stacks of it before even our natural stuff. I know certainly around here these tank-proof 5G masts that they're putting up. Maybe that's helping to turn everyone into a crackpot. I don't know.
Do you think would be on purpose, or you're saying it's just more human stupidity?
Well, there seems to be something going on where people are rewarded for crap behavior, selfish crap behavior.
Sure. Yeah, that does seem to be happening. You're not wrong about that.
You get more money if you're a serious drug addict or something like that, or you've got some kind of serious problems that you can't deal with, or you don't want to deal with. Those are the people who get the money. The people who try and deal with the problems don't get any.
You got to feel bad for them. I remember that even being an issue for England back when I was much younger, and people were talking about that. It's just kind of like, why are we rewarding this kind of behavior situation? And one does have to wonder where is it that people are naturally compassionate, or is there some kind of agenda here to really seriously weaken a society? Because obviously, there's one thing is charity. Another thing is giving people handouts that cause them to be so dependent that the entire society becomes crippled. I mean, it's just basic and intellectual. You just extend the thought process to the end, the nth degree, and you can tell where it's going. Right? It's going to fail. It's going to go bankrupt, and not just physically bankrupt, but morally bankrupt, because the person's bad behaviors are being subsidized, and that never leads anywhere good. Enabling bad behaviors does not lead to good places.
Well, of course it doesn't. But you see, everything's an agency now. Everything's an agency that ultimately gets its money from the government, and so, for example, I smashed my heel bone to bits about 12 years ago. So of course I couldn't. Well, it took 4 months before I could get an operation on it. So it was in 20 pieces. So of course I couldn't do any work. Now they sent me this is it. They sent me on a course that I had to go to for a week. And it was for communication and numeracy and literacy. This is it. And so I ended up going down to this course, and so I was the only white person there. Well, anyway, but so I ended up doing my what they call O-level English and maths. In the 2 days that I was there. Now, this is what I got a certificate for that in 1976. These are the basic grades you got to pass, to carry on in school. So, so anyway, there I am doing my O levels again. Of course, I think I got 100% in each, and of course, and why? So not only why did I have to go on that course? Was it for my benefit? No, it wasn't. It was to get the numbers up for the agency, who wanted to because there's so many people coming into this country who can't speak a word of English. Presumably it's for their benefit. But I was the first one to have to go down there. Of course, no money. No, you don't get any money if you don't go. And I've got just the bus fares. We're spending all my money, hopping around doing my O levels at 50-year-old. But so that's so this is why everyone's stuck in these agencies. It's just Simon says, do what the boss says, and that's it. Everyone's doing what this boss says, and the boss is an idiot, and that's it.
That's true. Buddy, do you have a perspective, buddy?
I'm currently looking for my headphones. I'm in the middle of something.
Okay. So Teddy, what do you think about the inflection point between 2019 and 2024? How do you reckon it figures into not just climate change, but our social climate change,
You're talking about like
Are they taking advantage, or is it coincidental, etc.?
you're talking about problems with electrical phenomena in the air, in the atmosphere, and what kinds of effects they could have on humans. Let me run something by you, okay? Because I mean, my basic area of study is like ancient, history and prehistory, right? And there's this major part of that thing which involves, the use of telepathy as a main system of communications before the flood, before the Tower of Babel. And what I come up with is that like a reasonable study of the history of human languages indicates that if the story of the Tower of Babel did not exist, we would have to invent it. Okay, so this is like until fairly recently, you had this system of communications which worked for a number of things which we don't have anymore. Which allowed communication with humans at distances, which allowed communication with other advanced animals, which allowed communication with pure spirits, and a number of things, right? And all of that broke down when the static charge of the Earth broke down, and it broke down in steps, right? I mean, before the flood, before the Tower of Babel, I mean, communication with people at distances, communication with other kinds of animals was common, and it didn't require anything exotic in order to happen, right? After the Tower of Babel fell, right? After the static surface charge of the Earth.
That's conjecture, but that doesn't mean that it's a fact. I mean, you'd have to provide some definite evidence, but tie that to the discussion. Okay.
Okay. The discussion was like, what kinds of effects would introducing electrical phenomena, charges into the.
The magnetic field is dropping. I think that no matter what anybody here thinks about Ben Davidson, we agree with him on this issue, is that we're in a currently a meta phase. It may not result in what he thinks, and that's the problem of trying to guess the future, but definitely there is a change happening in the magnetic field. So, I mean, is everything that's happening coincidental? Is it, government induced, or, what's your take on what
you're talking about human interference with the atmosphere and with atmospherics, right? Now, in the case of 5G, you had an almost perfect correlation between the 5G rollouts and incidences of COVID-19, right? And onsets of COVID-19 in various parts of the world. It was like, granted, correlation doesn't imply causality, but you don't ignore 100% correlation, right? It's like, you have these same places where, both in time and place, at the same times and in the same places, you had, 5G rollouts and you had COVID onsets, right? And, that tells me that you've got something going on there. Now, I don't believe that, the 5G by itself is enough to cause COVID, right? But I mean, there was some kind of a nexus between the two. I don't know what the answer to that is, or where that's gone. That was like being studied, like in 2019, right? Then that just sort of dropped.
Well, I mean, I put it in my paper. I could not find any direct cause, because all the 5G antennas that were installed at the time in 2020 were not located in the counties where we saw the most rapid doubling rates in March and April of 2020. So I did not find any correlation there. But I do think that what needs to be studied is aerosols. I think that to get this to spread fast, 5G is one answer. Another answer is aerosols, and we now know for sure the names of the operations that they were, utilizing aerosols to spread diseases as a test back in the 1950s. Apparition lac being one, and I think matchbox.
Well, La Montagne was growing HIV viruses via the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking about contrails starting like in 2019 or thereabouts, 2020.
Well,
yeah, certainly.
These aren't contrails. These are, because contrails are formed by the humidity interacting with the tail of the plane and the wings.
Okay, I don't believe that. I'm
talking
sorry.
about as purpose spread aerosols. Now they've been having geoengineering conferences all the way back to 2015, when they finally basically are coming out telling everybody that, okay, this is what we're going to do. And nobody seems to want to, it's like the population's become too dumb to understand that it is actually a factual thing that is happening. And I find that fascinating as to how that could happen, to where these people can just get away with it, really uncontested.
Yeah, the news don't report it. Nobody knows about it, and very few care about it.
Right. I mean, you're crazy. You're apparently crazy for just watching what they do, watching the news, I mean, they have conferences. They're very open about it. But these are factual projects that were done back in the 50s and 60s. And I reckon that it's the fastest way to spread. Now, that doesn't mean, though, there may not be direct evidence of, because it all blows away, why these counties. For example, the county next to the county seat for Boise, Idaho, that county had no 5G, but it had a doubling rate faster than any county in basically the tri-state area. Mm-hmm. And so I called them, and they said they did not have a UPS delivery, an Amazon center, a FedEx. They didn't have any way that people were touching.
Changing the water supply, maybe then?
I don't know. The lady blamed Californians, so I don't know what that, if that's true or not. I can say it is probably true that Californians were escaping there to get away from COVID in California because of fear, but that's not a scientific thing. That's just her, she might have a bias against Californians.
Let me ask you another question. Look, it's like, I can understand contrails, people trying to see the clouds and to cause rain in the summertime. You get like Texas, particularly West Texas, parts of California, and it's gone for 40, 50, 60 days and hasn't rained, right? And I could understand that. Why would anybody be doing any sort of a contrail thing in the dead of winter? That I do not understand, and I've seen a lot of that. Like,
I don't know. And now we know these certain government operations, they were definitely spreading diseases and things through. Now those were tests. So what are the tests for? If they didn't know that this reconnection event in November 2019 between Saturn and Jupiter was going to happen, well, they got proof now. It's awfully coincidental, is my point.
I just wondered, Ramone, did Bill Gates recently buy any land up in Boise, Idaho?
I don't know.
Or did he buy the whole lot of Idaho?
Probably. I would imagine so. But nevertheless, my interest is, well, it's definitely not purely academic. It's I'm interested in Robert's theory, because I've been trying to figure out why people in my life would suddenly, because I'm very strongly electromagnetically connected. When I feel it slip out of phase, I go and I do a reset. In fact, on the hike on July 4th, I got to the park there, and I took a nap first until my body twitched, and I snapped awake, and it took about 20 minutes to phase in, and then I went on a lovely hike. I had no lung issues at all, none, and it was hot. It wasn't cloudy. So if I'm hiking and I feel normal in nature and everything, then maybe it isn't nature that is changing the problem. Maybe there is something that they're doing in the environment, because being back in the city has definitely been rough on the old lungs. So, is it something that we're all just going to have to endure and get through? I don't have any answers per se, but I do think it is worth noting that the synchronicity is a thing, but also it's easy to hide your agenda if you know something is about to happen. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
I mean, if you roll in a 5G out somewhere, you can, you can disguise some operation, or disguise the rollout of that. It's fairly, it's fairly high security stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they have no reason to suspect that the closest that ever came was the public was making a joke about going to Area 51, right? And then like one guy shows up or something.
Oh
But
yeah,
you know, in reality, they could be doing anything, literally anything.
that's
And
right. That's
really
right.
would
And
not have any clue.
they're not they don't necessarily have to tell us, do they? Because it's official
No,
secrets, so they can just get on with what the hell they like.
they don't even have to tell the president. People don't realize that, but they don't even have to tell the president. I mean, unless he asks, they're not going to tell him.
Yeah.
Right? He has to be read into any kind of classified program. Let's say it's a Majestic 12, like now it's Majestic 21. You know what I mean? That is, you know, just a fact of things is that if he doesn't know about it, they're not going to tell him.
Well, that's right, and it's like all these laboratories in Ukraine, all these bio laboratories.
Right.
Nobody knew about them, did they? Nobody at all knew about them. And what they were doing there either. You know, and it's all just business as usual, isn't it? What the hell? Why the hell are they doing these crossover? Creating these crossover viruses anyway? I mean, who's good is it for? You know, so they know how to cure them in the future. We'll make something so evil, and it gives us all a job.
Right. It doesn't have, well, unless they already have the cure, right? I mean, if they have the cure, then it makes sense because then they don't have to worry about if it's still in the end, if biology is running everything, then their biases are going to be inherently only for people who are genetically coded to them. And it reminds me of there's some indications that the Chinese were doing research on, you know, this idea of how you could cure people with certain genetic diseases surrounding various races. Well, why would you need to do that research? You could do it in reverse, like how to create diseases only for a certain group of people. So it just reminds me of the Nazi death programs, to be honest with you.
That was apparently being done at least one of those biolabs in Ukraine. It was like they were working on on a DNA-based poison which only affected people of Russian ancestry. I don't know how you would do that, but if you're really just looking for a way to get Vladimir Putin pissed off in the biggest possible hurry, I think that would probably work. One of those labs that was working on an aerosolized version of rabies, you know, like what could go wrong. You know, like, oh yeah, we don't believe in earthquakes and wind, right? What happens if you have like an earthquake on a windy day next to something like that?
Yeah.
Man,
Well, we're going to have the age of CRISPR wars, I think, because CRISPR terrorism. People are going to have access to 3D print terrorists are going to have 3D printed guns, and they're going to have the ability to 3D print their own CRISPR machines. And once they have a CRISPR machine, they can make all sorts of biological and you know, terror-based weapons. So you know, is this behavior just sudden madness, or is it actually to do with this inflection period? And I think it's well worth exploring because, you know, after all, it is our survival.
I think possibly this crossing is a result of all this behaviour.
Okay, that's also possible. So you want to take it in more of a spiritual, religious direction.
Well, for now I do, because I feel the environment's pretty nice. I like it outside. I've been enjoying it. It's changed certainly. There's been some kind of strange weather patterns, but as far as for the life seems to really love it this year. You know, I've just been down there digging away with two male-female robin, only inches away from me. Every time I turn a stone over, they're down for the centipede or the worm. And then, you know, I'm just watching it all. Everything's very happy out there. The animals are anyway. the trees.
Do you reckon? Then? There's being a code change, and it's sort of a hey, get with it or perish situation. Is that your personal theory?
Is it a what? Sorry, Ramon.
A code change.
Well, I think I'm seeing unique weather again. I'm seeing weather I've never seen before. That's what I'm trying to say. But it all seems to be for the good. I think we're always subject to change, but I think what's been happening is these programs, these secret programs, and many other programs have been running for that long now. They're all reaching maturity, and probably this is why they're having to have a great reset, because all the shit's hitting the fan, and the bills are coming into these people, so they've got to hide the books quick, haven't they? Which normally takes a war or something else. So I think whatever happens, even if the thing does flip over, I think some of us will survive and carry on with the gardening.
Well, there's an interesting. Are you saying that we're fundamentally meant to be like hired gardening help?
Well, not hired. No one's hiring me. Well, I am being paid for this, but I do it anyway. I do it anyway. I make things out of the stone, useful things. I make an environment that I love and the animals love, and it's and I'm just happy to be in that.
Do you think that the problem is that in the West, you see, for China and India, that would not be a problem mentally, because they don't have a problem with circular existence like that. But because it is circular, you have to admit, it's like the planet exists so the people can exist, and then the people exist so that the planet can be tended, and they can learn while they're doing it. It's very circular. I think that we have this culture that is hell-bent on a forward direction that achieves something, that goes somewhere, becomes something, etc. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you've got to continually improve your systems. I think that's the joy of learning stuff.
Well, what's the point of improving the systems if we already know all the best permaculture and feng shui sciences? Why don't we just stop every bit of development that we're ever doing and just make the perfect permaculture and feng shui world, and do it like the Indians did it, just a little bit more scientific?
Well, I'd agree totally, but some people want to be billionaires, don't they? Some people want to be tearing around at 180 mile an hour in a Rolls Royce or an helicopter or whatever. Some people want to spend £1,000 in a restaurant at night, So that's it's, they've got to have their turnover. They've got to, they feel that they need all these extra things. That's the problem.
Okay.
Well, and so while we're still feeding these people's needs, that's always going to be the case, I think.
I don't know why we're feeding their needs, but it's certainly an expensive. It's an expensive habit, psycho-emotionally, spiritually, financially, environmentally. It's a very expensive habit to keep up, but I don't know that it's necessarily going to be acceptable to the masses to go the other direction, if that makes some sense.
Well, I think it seems to me like a lot of people have been so used to being mollycoddled and not getting anywhere unless the government let you do it and all the rest of it, that they wouldn't think twice. They wouldn't make their own journey. They wouldn't have their own journey. They'll do what they're told.
Now, when a parent takes away a toy from a toddler, that the toy, it was fine before, but then it became a problem. and the toddler began to become jealous and hit other kids and all this stuff, right? And they get to showing this level of addictive anxiety, possessiveness. They don't exactly just give it up without a fight. I mean, there's a tantrum. You know, they throw themselves on the floor and they kick and they scream, they pound, they cry. I mean, it's just the most pitiful. They can cry even, it's like a fake cry, but it still sounds real. It's quite impressive, actually.
Yeah.
It's annoying. It can be humorous, but eventually, you know, you get to a point you go, okay, that's enough, you know. And I reckon that that's exactly what's going to happen when people are no longer able to have just whatever, you know, whenever, as soon as they want it. I don't know what you guys think, but that's the way that I think is, you know, it's going to go. So
Really, it's like, I mean, that's like you're talking about the path to destruction. I keep trying to tell people, it's like, you know, Jesus loves us humans. Gaia hates us. Make no mistake. It's like, you know, the humans only survive on this planet by means of technology. No other way for humans to live on this planet. I mean, you either keep doing better and better with the technology, or you give up and try to go green and just all die. I mean, Greens are looking forward to. It's like, Democrats is worse than Nazis. So no communist or Nazi ever blew up a hydroelectric dam or some major piece of human infrastructure for the sake of Delta smelter or gefilte fish. Right? That's crazy. I mean, even Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler wouldn't have tolerated that shit for 2 seconds.
okay. Well, I'm an anti-democrat, but on the show we're going to probably focus on not necessarily the political belief system.
No,
I mean, I agree with you personally. Okay,
yeah,
personally, I agree.
I know.
There's a noise happening here. Sorry, I can't hardly hear anything. There's some scraping going on or something.
I don't. Baby Buddy is making food or something. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Right.
Greens in all political stripes, right? I mean, it seems to cross over.
And that's my point, is that it is now headed in all the parties. Even the Libertarian Party is complete garbage. It's gone, as far as I could tell. The Laborers and Conservatives and all whoever in other countries are completely nuts. There's a widespread corruption of the data. And I see lots of good people whose bodies are just absolutely failing them. And I think that there must be something to it on a scientific level. I know that there's an agenda, and I know that I don't know, but I suspect that they've jumped on the opportunity to ruin our lives. I absolutely 100% believe that. However, there seems to be something more going on, is my point. Hopefully I'm not crazy for saying that.
Something in the air, you know, which is affecting behavior of leaders and people that shape these policies. Is that what you think you're seeing?
I don't know. I think it may be a complex mixture because of the what do you call the nonlinear dynamics of the situation. I'm also interested in the difficulties that I suddenly have with memories of things. I had the hardest time yesterday remembering one-page strategic plan, even though just a couple months ago I was making a one-page strategic plan. Now, I know that I haven't thought about it too much in the last 2 months, but that doesn't mean that I should have trouble finding the words. How could my brain be suddenly struggling with that? There's something odd going on, and it could be angels and devils and things like that. But I mean, it may be something much more insidious or much more planned out. But it may also be something purely natural, or again, complex combination of the two. I'll be interested to know what the audience thinks and when they, reach out. But my concern is, as a father, of course, naturally, that's like where I immediately go to, is creating resiliency is my interest. I just got I got some like night vision stuff. I've launched my resilient store, so people can go to resilientway-stores.com, and order, tactical and survival and resilient camping stuff for cheap. But, I honestly don't know what's going to happen. It's just the desire to be prepared is very strong on a genetic level. Like I feel it as a man. It's not just a psychological thing. I've never really been like a hunter or prepper in my life. And then suddenly everybody I know is talking about prepping. Hence the wanting to take advantage of the economic opportunity. I find it all very fascinating for sure.
I recommend everybody get into prepping to some extent at this point. It's like,
hold on a second, Eddie. Buddy was going to say something.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone, excuse me. If you're not into prepping, you should get into prepping. This is a great time to start making big money in selling food to people. My presentation for my event is going to be the future of food is electric. Because the future of food is electric, and it's the food that lasts 25 years shelf life. This is it. This is the time. I mean, I hit it in perfect time. I was listening to Christian with not Backyard Scientist, Adapt 2030, and last year he was talking about getting freeze dryers and the price of food going up, and I could totally see it all happening for the past couple of years. So I bought a freeze dryer, and it paid for itself in one weekend of working. For $4,000. People can't get enough of freeze dried food because they're scared. They need to have some sort of a sense of safety, a safety net. So when people come up to my booth, they're buying 6, 8, 10 bags. This is the future. To have food security. We can see the prices going up, skyrocketing nonstop. So food security is on the very top, food and water security. So
yeah, food prices are doubled, aren't they?
Yeah, they're gonna continue to go up, and there's not going to be enough food to feed everybody. Everything's going in the direction of not enough babies, not enough kids to take care of the adults, not enough food to feed everybody.
we
got enough babies that they're all politicians.
They're going to say that there's too many people, and it's a perfect polarization of life versus death. Too many people on the earth, and all it is a matter of perspective. And you can poison someone's perspective to make them want to kill everything. Easy.
Yeah, it's a disgusting idea. Too many people on the planet. It's like saying, you're on a boat. And every couple of years, you've got to kick a load of people off it to run a nice boat.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. And
I mean, it's tantamount to Central America, where they were slaughtering thousands of people, and tipping the blood on the soil so they got the terra preta,
Well,
but
you have to convince the people to kill the other people too.
Exactly. Exactly. Convince them it's a good idea.
So they're trying to convince us all to get on the death bandwagon. That's right. Mainstream science.
That's right.
Kill your babies. This is how they're making us being convinced of this. They're telling us there's not enough space, which produces inside of people claustrophobia. They're telling us that there's not enough land for people. They're telling us that there's an overpopulation and that we need to take care of it. And now, is that really happening? Or let's take a look at China. China had a mandatory three baby policy. This was back before the 70s. This was back in the 20s or something. They had a mandatory 3-child plus policy. Then they took that away because that wasn't working, because they saw the outgrowth of population explosion. So then they changed it to only a one-child policy. They're racing between why they keep doing this is because they're trying to balance out. They're trying to have some sort of stability in their country where there's enough kids to take care of the elderly and dying population, and they can't figure out the correct wane, the correct ebb and flow to it. So they did the one-child policy, which is population control and by death, because they only let pretty much the men be born for forever, and that's why women, ladies from China, Chinese women are highly sought after in all of American rich folk. You look at Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know if she's Asian or Chinese or whatever. One after the next, after the next, after the next. These CEOs and these people who own a lot of money, they're after Chinese women because they're rare. There's a rarity of them. They're a rare breed because they could barely make it out of the last 8 decades of us killing them babies. Fast forward to today, and China can't take care of its population, so they lifted up the one-child ban, and now they're doing a 2.5 plus child encouragement to have more children. Bring that over to the United States, and you have Elon Musk telling us that we should have at least 2.5 children per household. Bring it to the mainstream, and the mainstream says, kill them all. There's not enough land. There's not enough resources. And the illusion of the lack of resources is making people commit suicide, which is making the higher ups like, yes, more of them dead, good. And not only is it making suicide, but there won't be enough of us to take care of ourselves in America unless there's robotics or the healthcare exponentially expands to the point where there's comfortable living and not abuse and rape and all sorts of horrible shit that goes on in old folks' homes.
Yeah, that's a sad subject. That's right. So that leads us, I guess, very naturally into we could either go MIMS or we could talk spacers. It does seem a natural spacers discussion, to be honest with you, because the need to develop that kind of society. Here's a funny thing. My little brother who visited, he's in the Marines. He went back. He's in the cyber division, which basically means he's on the he's either going to be offense or defense in cyberspace for the Marines. He put me onto this series you guys should check out called Love, Death, and Robots. Now, the episode last night didn't have as much CG. It had Topher Grace and some other lady. There was a civilization in their refrigerator, and they watched it develop, and and then they went through nuclear holocausts, and of course the assumption that we have to go through this, and then they develop themselves splendorously, and becomes this highly advanced computerized culture that then turns into pure light and flits around the place, and then they disappear. And then the refrigerator resets to dinosaurs and stuff. Now, that's all science fiction. But it is interesting that we are at a place where we're talking about how to develop ourselves, and maybe we can introduce some rapid social maturity and evolution if we require certain things. The curbing of pure materialism. Of course, I'm real bad for that. I like buying stuff. I like shopping, but I like having the things that I want, and I always have more things that I've always wanted. So I like participating in the economy. But in general, I recognize that it's probably not good for the entire planet to be in this mode. So, creating a bent towards creating a more resilient society, et cetera, I think that's acceptable. What I don't find personally acceptable is, we're going to go in the direction of this energy that's going to kill all the jobs and all the other energy industry, Isn't it interesting to benefit the share prices of a very select few group of people? And the technologies aren't even that green. Like electric cars are not that green. And obviously wood burning, natural
can I
gas
add to
plants
this?
are not green. So how do we get to the true green energy, guys? Because the public wants to know. Everybody who's in our audience is going to already believe in having true green energy. They're already going to be aware that we shouldn't be doing lithium batteries. So how do we get there?
I can tell you what we really are doing. It doesn't involve being green. Okay, it's like we've got like ways to go that would give us 1,000 years at present rates of energy usage, without any harm to the planet, without anything, right? It's like
things like we had Sky on here, and he's producing this engine. This engine can get like a ridiculous amount of miles to the gallon. It can go down to 30 RPMs, up to 30,000 RPMs. You're talking about technologies like that, improvements in hydrocarbon use?
Right. It's like we should be using propane for land vehicles for the most part, but we should be using these new kinds of piston engines which are coming online. That Acadi's engine, OPOC, right? We've got pairs of pistons moving together. You don't have a cylinder head, right? You've got compression between two pistons. Two-stroke, right? It's an advanced.
It's basically like his, yeah.
Okay. This would be like a huge gain in basic efficiency. We should be using propane for land vehicles. We should be using petroleum, like for aviation fuel and for chemicals, right? And then we should be using advanced reactors for electricity. And this would be like thorium, which nobody wanted to hear about in the 1950s because it's safe. You cannot make bombs with it. Everybody wanted to be making bombs in the 1950s, right? So it's like a terrorist would have no use for thorium. It's plentiful. It's found on every continent on the earth. It's much more abundant than uranium. It's like a couple of 100 times more efficient than uranium for producing electrical power, and it burns down to nothing, right? I mean, there's absolutely there's no downside. We've got enough thorium, like for at least 1,000 years worth of present electrical usage.
Right. Well, there is a potential downside, but it's not environmental. The downside is what I describe in the spacers is when we get to a stage 2 and 3 of the conquering the solar system, each one of these cities becomes its own nation state because each city ends up becoming a hub of something important for the space industry. And eventually they start to have disagreements, as people naturally do. And nuclear is going to beget more nuclear, and that includes nuclear weaponry.
As far as human population.
But we'll get beyond that. I think we'll get beyond that. People think that we won't get. I think that we will develop anti-nuclear defense systems. The soldiers have sonic attack, and then they also have suits that they're developing that are sonic deflection of bullets. So I think that we'll develop nuclear deterrency, and we'll utilize that kind of level of energy, nuclear energy. But it's not the only way to get clean energy. There's also geothermal, there's wind, and like true wind, and then there's river turbines and ocean currents. There's a lot of ways to do it. And then we get into the space, and there's the birkeland currents. So there's lots of potential ways for us to harvest energy, much more energy than there is right now, the capture of.
Right. You've got this thing Tesla was working on, which he apparently was like on the ragged edge of being able to provide the whole planet with electricity for next to nothing, right? I mean, just absolutely free. It was going to obviate the need for electric lines, for copper wires. And of course, J.P. Morgan, who owned all of the copper mines in the country, didn't want to hear about that. You've got all kinds of capabilities looking at us in the face, right? You could put the whole present population of the Earth in Texas, and it wouldn't be that crowded, right? And I believe the planet can support. I don't think you'd want to do it, right? But if for some reason you wanted to, the planet could probably support at least 100 times the present human population. You've got the question of, how long Venus is going to take to become habitable, just left alone, right? Versus the question of humans, hurrying the process along, right? I mean, I don't know. Nobody's ever, to my knowledge, even thought about, trying to ask that question, much less solve it. You've got a whole another extra planet force sitting there sooner or later. okay, planet very similar to the Earth that was being described in the 1940s, right, as being, at a given latitude, just maybe 10 or 15 degrees warmer than the Earth just due to its position in the solar system, right? I mean, it's hot now because it hasn't cooled. It's exactly what Velikovsky was saying. It's like all you have to do is get it cooled somehow or other. You've got a whole nother world sitting there right next to us. It'd be fairly easy to do. You've got the Pacific Ocean, right, which is the part of the world opposite Pico Island, right, which is just absolutely nothing but water. What I call the Pacific Void. That could be made habitable. It's like for humans, you would have to build things that floated. And the safest place to be on Earth in any kind of a cataclysm or anything like that is like 200 or 300 feet beneath the waves in a submarine, right? But just make yourself some, 1,500-foot long submarines. Doesn't have to be able to go down 1,000 feet like a German U-boat or anything like that. It's like 300-400 feet at the most. Hollow tubes made out of graphene or something like that. I mean, there's like an opening in the world for somebody to become the Andrew Carnegie of carbon fiber, or the Andrew Carnegie of graphene, or this next thing that they have in the pipeline behind graphene. You can make things which are essentially like cigar tubes, with pontoons and, decks, which would be very easy to deal with, be very strong. It's like any kind of a storm, any kind of a problem, just get down 200 feet beneath the waves. The only thing that you would have to do, which is, which I would strongly recommend, which is hideously anti-green, for the point of view of greens, right, would be just to exterminate the sharks. I mean, you've heard me say that the shark is the shark is the ultimate trash fish of the universe. They're not really edible. They attack humans in the water, and they consume. The worst part of it is they consume some ungodly quantity of ordinary fish, which would otherwise be available for humans. I'm all for it. I don't see a downside to that. It's like, the balance of nature doesn't miss the tyrannosaur, and I don't see how it would miss sharks. Certainly not the 5 or 6 types.
Again, I don't know why you hone in on sharks, but they're probably an important part. If they have survived for hundreds of millions of years, they're probably a pretty important part of the natural
system.
Yeah,
I agree with Ramone, and we should leave the sharks alone. And
I
eat the odd one. I eat the odd bit of shark as well, and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, Theodore, this is we're talking about life here, but we're also talking about death, but we're trying to figure out how to prolong life in living species. And then in another episode that we were talking, I was telling you that any apex predator is the species that controls the stability of any system.
Yeah, they're the keystone.
Okay, I don't believe that. It's like I believe you've got too many species on this planet which were created for nefarious reasons. It's like, no reason to have roaches on this planet. There's no reason to have mosquitoes, bed bugs, chiggers, ticks, biting flies, stinging things, right? No-see-ums.
Well, that's Theodore. This is a wonderful opportunity for you possibly to understand that these so-called wicked things, or these disgusting or creepy things, are part of the dark and mysterious reality of the universe. Everything has creepy crawlies. There is a creepiness and our sense of morbid curiosity is real, and it could be that these creepy things are part of our morbid curiosity.
Okay, I don't believe. I'm sorry. Look, it's like this is not a reasonable human home world. The Earth isn't. It's like there actually was like 50,000 years ago. You really had a reasonable human home world sitting there. It was like Jupiter's largest moon, which is called Ganymede, and there were no sharks there. It's like a reasonable human home world.
Yeah, but we don't know for sure that we were there. I mean, it's not a thing that we know for sure.
I think
we have a hypothesis.
I think
But
that's fairly certain.
well, now the focus of this show is not the past.
Yeah.
Okay, we disagree about the past, and I'm sure we'll have some. We're talking about upgrading humanity to survive for the future, because as much as people drive me crazy, I love individuals. Right, I get along with individuals pretty well. There's a few I wouldn't mind to get a hold of and take them behind the woodshed, but for the most part, I love individuals. I get along with them very well. But as even with people being the problem, people are also the solutions. Nikola Tesla was all about increasing human momentum and human energy. And
Right.
the goal here is to utilize a MEMS that creates a better society. Now, you feel your hypothesis in your book is an important MEMS, that it's going to do something for humanity, or at least it's doing something for you. You want people to know about your hypothesis.
I don't
But what
believe
we're
it.
talking about is survivability of the species. We're talking about survivability of the planet. And
Now,
if even if you don't think that this is a good planet, then you must agree we should probably create systems that'll help us to get off the planet. Wouldn't you say?
Could I
Go ahead.
steer us back? Could I steer us back on track and go and talk more about how to increase in life on the planet during these death cult times, where there's so much death and so much power and control that is capitalized on death?
It's more or less what my MEMS pep talk was. So yes, absolutely, you can.
So why should we pump more carbon into the atmosphere is the question. Okay.
I can think of only one good reason, is that the trees are going to run out of it if we don't. But we shouldn't be pumping pollution in the atmosphere, which is a different thing. Carbon's not pollution.
Right. So there's a war on carbon, and carbon in the atmosphere. The more carbon in the atmosphere or in the system, the more life. There's the more
right.
living things, the more
That's
abundant, right. And the more prodigious, and there's another word, but the more life forms.
Fecundity.
Fecundity, yes, thank you. That's the word. Carbon equals fecundity, which is variety in a system, as well as far as the system here on Earth. The trees give that off, and it adds to the cycle of things. Now,
absolutely.
Us cutting a lot of the trees down and deforestation could lead to maddening in our minds. Yesterday, I was driving down the road, and I'm just like, ooh, I got this urge. I really need to plant a tree soon. I plant several trees a year, like I need to. I just have to. I get this urge. It's like the opposite of the death cult, and there's people who really believe in this stuff. I'm not for these movements, because that's the movement that's going to squash them all. Is ecology. For nature's sake, is to keep in harmony with nature, and then that leads to PETA and all these other organizations that are like actually the tip of the spear when it comes to leading, because that's the whole idea of weather control and climate control. It's all in a guise to try to help protect nature. So it's usually always in a helpful way, in a saving the environment way, that the greening of everything is coming in. So we need to figure out ways how to you can't really create matter, but ways how to transfer other elements into carbon and push that out in the atmosphere, and that's going to help save a lot of life as we know it. And that was an interesting thought that I had with the lack of trees and our mental instability. because the more and more trees we chop down, the more and more we got into the industrial age, the more and more we got into the technological age, and the more and more mental instability is happening. But I don't know if that's, I wouldn't say.
No, I would say that the way that we chop down trees could be one of two natural things. One, well, three if you include the fear of the unknown. One
what
would
if
be
you hurt the tree? Real quick. So my thought was, if you hurt the trees, it hurts our minds. That's all. That's all I want to say real quick.
Absolutely.
Well, let me. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is that
sorry to interrupt, Ramone.
Reflected internal disease, right, and internal madness, but it also could reflect a natural signal telling us there's too little carbon and we need to cut off how many things are consuming carbon, because in the past there would be these widespread destructions that burn massive amounts of forests that put carbon back in the air so that the forest could grow anew again, and then there would be a re-speciation. So maybe we're performing some kind of task that we're not even aware that we've been told to do. But I think it's personally, because I love trees so much, I think it's an aberration of the mind. I think that people that are denuding their lawns, I've personally watched whole streets of the neighborhood that I grew up in become denuded of the beautiful trees that I grew up seeing going into fall. And it makes me very, very sad.
Well, that's what's happened to my place now. We're my mum's house. It's the only house on this street that's got a tree in its garden. Any trees in the garden? Everyone else they've just flattened the front gardens and parked the cars there. The back gardens, of course, there are a few growing, not like ours, but because they like to have unrestricted suntans if the sun's out. But of course, then end up sitting under an umbrella after half an hour. But this garden's absolutely beautiful, full of wildlife, full of birds, full of flowers.
But the weird thing that's going to happen is the more species, the more creepy crawlies, because there needs to be, life. There's life on all scales. I'm a very firm believer of this. And the life is organized and pre-scripted inside of birkeland currents and the helicon waves that are chirping around in the atmosphere. It's refined through recursion in these tubes. This is where life has a larger scale. If we're going to believe in the morphogenetic fields and morphogenetics, I believe that it's the sound. I believe everything's made out of sound, and it's the sound that it's mimicking. Life is mimicking the sounds that we hear in the heavens as a scaffolding, and this is all like.
Well, I'm not so sure it's just sound though. I mean, I agree. It's morphogenic fields, and every life form has its own specific type, which it tunes into specifically. But I think it's more this bioluminescence that they're aware of. I can sometimes see really tiny little insects from I'll be watching it from maybe a foot away, and when it realises I can tell that it's stopped doing what it does when it sees that I'm observing it, and so even that thing is aware of my bioluminescence, and I think there is a communication that happens that way, because that's how animals communicate. A lot of animals through their eyes, and so
sorry, guys.
I mean there probably is a sonar one as well, because we respond to, obviously we've got very, very fine audio abilities, and most creatures have, I suspect, that have antenna or a pair of ears. I mean, look what a bat can do, and it's not too far removed as a species from us, I don't suppose. Not too far removed.
Clicking? Isn't that a form of clicking? It's all through a series of clicking and the sound bouncing off of walls, and we can train our minds to do that too.
Yeah, blind people can do that.
Yeah, our minds are equipped with that that information. or
Yeah.
that ability to process that information.
That's right. That's right. So blind people can actually do that. I mean, that's normally why that white stick they tap, so they can get to be aware of the rest of their environment besides what they're just tapping.
Well, that's another interesting point about this is that almost all of our senses are all being interpreted through hairs or cilia. In your lungs, there's hairs, there's cilia, breathing. In your eyes, there's rods and cones that are like hairs. They're seeing, they're perceiving the visual. In our ears, there's hair, there's cilia, and when it's gone, you can't hear. And on our skin, there's hair, there's cilia, and that's how we feel and how we sense our environment. Just like whiskers, we have whiskers. Why do you think we get goosebumps when we start, when we get into good convo, or when something really hits us that we're enamored with, or even when we're scared, or when we can sense something ain't right?
Well, that's right, and plus we lose a lot of charge through our hair as well. Especially if you've got long hair, you distribute excess charge through your hair.
You also you distribute and you would collect as well. Same with the beard. Why do you think the wise man always has a beard? I mean, it's like long beard, long hair.
That's it.
That's a classic trope.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's interesting stuff. But yeah, I think all these life forms, of course, they all respond to their own morphogenic field, and however that is transmitted, and I suspect somehow it resides in the ether, and I don't know why, but I feel that the speeds, the etheric, the ether can carry things faster than light anyway. I would think, because with them being such tiny particles, I would think they'd vibrate faster than I don't know. That's just my kind of. It's fascinating what's contained in that ether, though, because it is packed full of information. How it's stored, I'm not sure.
Right, and that's the thing. See, it's about information processing. When you get into any field, especially the field of cosmology, where you're trying to figure out how everything works, data, ether, how data and information is processed is through heat exchange, heat transfer. So when something dies, we call it entropy, and that heat death or expulsion is information. So entropy is information. So what would negentropy be? People don't really talk about the opposite spectrum often, and this is where speciation occurs. Speciation and negentropy are synonymous because it's
new information, or a new way of looking at old information. Maybe I think it's a new arrangement, a more appropriate arrangement
it's like a phase transition. Think of all new species coming into existence constantly. It's happening so rapidly that we can't count them. And this is what people who have a lot of money, who are discoverers and conquistadors, people who are going around the world and finding new things and naming it after themselves, they have a lot of money, and a lot of them are named after, people with money, and you can see the trail of the name of certain things. And anyway, speciation, negentropy, the life end of the spectrum, focusing on that is where you can get a lot more. A lot of it is hypothetical or theorized, but there's no reason why theoretical cosmologists on our side of the spectrum, of life side of the spectrum, can't come out and compete with the theoretical physicists that are talking about Big Bang and death theory, black holes and dark matter and dark energy. We're going to find that the information is structured inside of these tubes within tubes within tubes, as the Dougherty set shows off, and as Don Scott's approval for what the Dougherty set is. You can see the information scaffolding. So the individual tubes have hairs. They perceive that the hairs what brushes them is polytopes. Polytopes are geodesics, geometrical shapes that are moving and spinning inside of these tubes in certain directions. You can see it on the top of Saturn. You can see it and all sorts of different arrangements. And diaphragm instability is another one. But this geometry and this information exchange is geometric, and that's also what the Dougherty set is showing, and what physics is coming to now. They're realizing that like Buckminster Fuller was definitely onto some things, and I've called my geometry isotropic vector matrix for ever since it started, because that's the only thing that I could find that was similar to it. The dodecahedron and the 64 cubic lattice grid, or the A3 grid, according to math. But this geometry is what we're composed of, and the geometry sings and it hums and if you put the sound of the auroras on and just listen to it, you can hear the morning birds, the birds that come out in the morning right after water goes through a phase transition every single night after it's negatively charged all night, and it hits the part where it comes to be positively charged. I don't know if you guys know that, but all of nature, we learned from Gerald Pollack, gets negatively charged at night. That's why it's a different energy, and you can feel the different energy. It's a cold, like ionic change. Now, every morning during witching hour, right around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, these Hissler and Whistler waves, they change, and they have like an orbit around the planet, a preponderance of an orbit around the planet, and they come in right with the morning birds, it's like the birds here are communicating also, and are part and parcel of the package of how the field creates the form. They're just resonating with it, because when you take a bird away from its parents and it loses its song generation after generation, the song of the bird will come back, even though it's not taught to the bird, because it's a resonance in the air, because they know their call. It's like we know our colors. You have to know who we are, right? How to know who you are. You have to know your colors, know who you are. It's a resonant call, and then you be who you are, and people love it, because you are expressing yourself to the fullest of, this is who I am, and I'm going to be who I am, and whether you like it or not. And that's raw, and that's real, and people like real. But I went on a tangent there, but life, this geometry is living, and it's what dance is, and it's what drum circles are, and it's what entheogens allow us to see pictures of, and it's this remembrance of our eternality in these cosmic strings and cosmic DNA and arrangement through the braiding of the Bessel functions of Birkeland currents is eternal, and we're re-picking up on a lot of this scientifically, mathematically. We're going to reach a zenith here shortly, where there is like where the fractal revolution, where fractals created the internet. We're going to reach a revolution where plasma fractals, space-time fractals, this geometry gets our minds and our bodies into the ether, so that we can see anything anywhere in the universe and dial into it. That's going to be what we do first, before we're able to actually go into it and become those things.
If I push back on Teddy, I got to push back a little bit. This is a conjecture. I just want to make it clear. This is a hypothesis that you have. We don't know for sure that that's exactly how it's gonna work.
Absolutely.
The problem that Ben Davidson runs into is that he's running against. There's an axiom: past trends do not indicate future events. They're a strong correlative, and they're very useful for working on things. But trust me, when I say from personal experience with crypto in 2022, they are not necessarily perfect indicators. And we don't know exactly what's likely to happen. And it very may well be that the society that created the Great Pyramid power plants thought that they were on the cusp of something, some major shift too. And we see how that has turned out. I mean, it is a desert. So we don't know exactly. But I think that what you're describing is that there's a potential for that. Now, in the Conquering the Solar System, what I describe is a series of engineering and most importantly, pre-engineering. The concept of pre-engineering is itself, I think, a MIMS, because planning is apparently where we're currently at. But people make lots of plans, and the most famous thing about plans is that they fail. Scheming, planning, all these things tend to result more and more failures than activity. I just this morning watched a failed raid by Ukrainian sabotage recon force back in 2017 in the Donbass. Now, I'm not exactly sure what exactly their plan was. They were obviously approaching an entrenched position that the Russians held on this hill. But as the plan unfolded, they began to infiltrate via these old trenches. Now, an objective observer, my first thought was, why are you walking in these trenches? If I was the Russians, the first place I would put mines is under the snow in these trenches. And guess what? That's exactly what you see. It's a chest cam from the Ukrainian. He gets blown up, and then the camera switches. We see the other side, and he's calling their people and over their cell phone from this guy who died named Alex. And he calls the mom. He calls, he tells them, your people are all dead. It's a brutal video. It's about 9 minutes long. Plans fail because nature often has the opposite idea, or it feeds off. We may have to explore change theory more. It may be that nature reads our plans and then adjusts itself in a counteractive way. We don't honestly know how the system reacts to our expectations and beliefs. But I strongly suspect that we have a lot of pre-engineering to do in order to even begin to engineer a phase 2 of stage 1 society. And right now, Musk is already saying, well, we're going to be on Mars. Yeah, maybe him by himself. That's not going to do anybody any good.
Yeah, we want to know more about the creatures here on Earth first. There's so much to learn about us. And
we probably should clean up the ocean, I would imagine, and build some underwater cities, because cities underwater would be a very good practice for cities in space. The pressures would be opposite, but it's the same fundamental.
Well,
I think that's how they started building spaceships to begin with, underwater.
I think building on the oceans is a better investment myself, and above on the floating cities with submersible attachments. That's the way I'd go. Like Ted was saying, massive big concrete, make it massive big concrete tubes made out of the seashells on the beach.
Okay.
Big concrete tubes, and
I'm not saying you're wrong, but there's a problem. It's just like the San Diego Chargers don't win the Super Bowl. If you don't go to the environments that push you to the edge, you'll never reach the edge. If you don't learn how to fight Mike Tyson, you can't win the championship. And for us to survive in space, we have to survive in the most harsh environments on Earth in the first place, because space is much worse.
That's right. I mean, they were talking about parts of Mars at like 273 degrees below. I mean, are there any spacesuits designed to cope with those sort of temperatures? you know, and the amount of charge flying around up there on the moon, they reckon, is enough to potentially fry someone who's just touches a rock. Could just blow an hole right through the wellies, you know. So there are big problems. There are big problems that, like you say, we can only go underwater. A human being can only go underwater, 600 feet maximum, something like that, you know, and that's on a helium mix. And you've got to be in a bell and decompress for like a week afterwards.
Right.
So you know, there's a lot. We've got a long way to go on this. Like Ted says, on planet Earth, half of the Earth is the Pacific Ocean, just about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, you got to make tubes when you go to make these these floating, you know, housings, you know, for humans out on the ocean. I don't think you use concrete at all. You use carbon fiber. I mean, carbon fiber is ungodly strong and it's terribly light. I mean, if you've
all the
seen,
more reason why in the paper that I mentioned that we have to sequester carbon. We have to simultaneously terraform Mars and Venus, but because we need the carbon from Venus for Earth and for Mars. We need it for Earth for a different reason. For the forests, yes, but mostly for the carbon fiber. And then for the Mars, it just needs an atmosphere. We have to transport that atmosphere from, but that's all stage 2. Stage 1 is still just getting a reasonable city and port on the moon. And I don't believe that the conspiracy theory that we have one. I don't believe it. It could be true, but I just don't believe it. I don't think we've got our stuff together enough.
right. Mars is an archaeological site, the whole planet. You don't terraform archaeological sites.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. That's like saying you can't build a factory next to Göbekli Tepe. I don't believe that. Even if it is an archaeological site, which is just, again, it could be an archaeological site from the cataclysms or whatever. You don't abandon developing New York City because there used to be ancient natives living on Long Island. You always have to push forward. You always have to develop yourself and move towards the future. You can't live only in the past. I think it does us a lot of credit to know the past. I think it does us a lot of credit to know the King Arthur past. But once we, you know, find and we crack open the Bluegrass Army Depot and everybody can see the top secret mounds that are there that prove that the Welsh were here. Well, we don't just stop developing Madison County and go, oh, this whole area was settled by the Arthurians. No, you develop a tourism industry out of it. And we there's whole industries that are going to come out of spacerization. But the question is, how do we build the MIMS now? The best we've got are these software suites. Of course, that new one got emailed to me or messaged on Academia to me. And I haven't gotten to check it out. I don't know, if you got a chance, but Nick's been also playing with some certain softwares. But he's working on the mathematics of the future. And Aaron's doing his part, although he's not been on the show lately. But he is working on trying to build a semiconductor industry. It's not easy because people are not easy. This is the reason why stage 1 is taking so long. Already, we got most of the way through stage 1 and then started falling backwards. We're going to destroy the International Space Station and head towards war in space, which makes no sense, obviously. Unless you understand what Velikovsky was talking about, and then you understand exactly the depraved why we're doing.
War creates more technologies, so the need for war in space is going to create the best spaceships.
Yeah, well, that's true, but it'll still be kind of retarded because it doesn't matter at this stage how good a spaceship you make. If you build a $2 trillion spaceship, a railgun from Earth could take it out very, very easily. Very, very easily. So the real problem is the mentality of it. I'm not denying that, technology is the zeroth domain of war. So in terms of MIMS, you know, if you have, the problem is that war seems to be in the anti-MIMS. It destroys and everything. So if you go developing, if you use that as your means of development, this is true, like martial artists. you become really strong, and most martial artists become humble and good members of society. But there are a few who become dangerous people. All right, now I'm a dangerous person, but I'm not a dangerous person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
There are dangerous people that come out of that. And if we constantly develop, like it's the age of Aries.
Would you say Joe Rogan is dangerous?
No, he's dangerous.
No, he's dangerous. He could do damage if he wanted, but he's a gentle blow.
He's a very gentle.
Okay, what about? Okay, I'm trying to think of. This is a good talk. I want to know more because I've always thought about this stuff, and I've seen the signs myself, and I listen to crime murder podcasts like a woman does. So,
okay. You want to talk about martiality? Is that what you're saying? And the art of war?
Well, I had said something this last weekend at one of the fairs I was at, talking to a group of folks, and it made me realize, wow, like women are drawn to murder podcasts because naturally they're more endangered. They have to protect themselves when they walk down the street. They have to go in pairs to the bathroom.
Correct.
They have to, like this is the thing, like. So they're drawn, they're afraid, but not consciously, maybe subconsciously, to get the hegemony over, like always know the next move in case something happens, how weird things go down, situations. So that's why they watch it.
Yes, it's biological.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I had 2 events in a row in a month, or 2 events in a row. Well, either way, how far they were apart, where my life was in jeopardy and things were extremely dangerous and there was weird, wicked shit going on. Now, that's why after that, I started watching podcasts.
Why wouldn't you talk to me, your martial artist friend and teacher of art of war and teacher of boxing? Why wouldn't you go to the very...
We do all the time. We do all the time.
I know, but no, I mean directly about this particular need. Like, because obviously I haven't revealed things in years. I just put out a video, a 1-minute video, because I visited a magic place in this county and promised that I'm going to be releasing some close quarter combat. I find it fascinating. People, they go through this kind of thing and then they don't come talk to me because I'm the guy who you want to talk to. So what happened exactly? Tell the audience a little bit more detail.
I don't want to go into it. It's very traumatic. It's very hard to tell the stories.
Well, what are you going to do if you're in a war situation? Everything about martiality is traumatic. So, I mean, are we talking you were personally threatened, or it was you were surrounded, or you were mugged?
It was a situation where I was led directly into a situation, and we were flanked by a whole bunch of people, and I had a car, my daughter, another girl, my girlfriend's daughter, Ashley. So we had a car full of, women and children. And
vulnerable. You're right. You realized then in your position.
We were in the middle of the mountains. And we went to a mountain house on a peak that was hidden back behind other houses. And there was a whole series of houses that were mountain peak houses behind these houses, and they were off the grid. And then we got flanked, and I pulled us out, and it was 9 o'clock at night, and we were at the end of the road, and I pulled us out, and they used the hidden boy, lost boy theme. And this is a book. This is totally a book. We're gonna have to write it, but I'm not gonna give away much detail. It was fucked. We don't even want to give the energy out there of the idea of the lost boy, but people need to know how the subversions of the wicked, how they use a lost kid, or they pretend one of the kids is lost so that you have to stay there and wait for that person.
All right. I have a couple questions about these people. Are they pirates, preppers, terrorists, jihadis? I mean, what kind of groups of people are we talking about? Just some rednecks? I mean, what's going on?
Let's just say it was the last 2 mathematicians I was working with.
No, I mean the surrounders, the marauders. Russians.
All of a sudden, they started talking Russian. We had people on golf carts. We had people. We had a random car pull up in front of us and block us in. And they got out and started talking about a lost puppy. And they wanted us to get out of the car and pull the girls out of the car to start looking for the lost puppy. And I fucking sped off to the closest place. And the closest place we went, they were all in on it. Everybody fucking in the town. We went inside the town in the bathroom and in this gas station, and there was lost pictures of people all over. And we went to the ice cream stand, and our ice cream, when we bought it, it was 666, which was just another fucking coincidence.
That's an omen that you received.
So we got when we left, when we were leaving, finally I'm like, fuck this, we're leaving. I'm not waiting for the kid that we were waiting for. I'm like, this is fucked up. This is literally there was some seance involved. There was it was a cloud of like wickedness. Literally, I've never been in a thicker cloud of confusion and chaos, and that's on purpose, because the lost kid, you got to wait for your friend, right? So you have to stay there. No, you don't have to stay there. Fucking the kid manipulated us and lied to us and said that he went with this girl who he just met, and then we found out he already knew her. So he was luring us into the woods to go do some ritual. That was the word, ritual. And I said no, and I left. And then the kid didn't show up. And then all of a sudden, his girlfriend and a bunch of weird people fucking showed up out of nowhere. And yeah. So anyway, after we left the gas station in what we thought was a safe public place, which happened to be the guy's favorite gas station where he goes to, one of the guys that was involved, and he's a martial artist. So this guy grabbed when he was in the car with my girlfriend, which my girlfriend took the keys and drove, because my girl, she's like totally, you can't tell if she's CIA or not. She's a baller, and she's amazing. But anyway, so she was smart enough to grab the keys and not let him drive. So she drove back to where we were going. Anyway, and while she was driving, he said the guy was gonna impregnate her, and they were gonna have a baby, and he was gonna name it martial artist. And
I mean, this guy sounds like he's shin disturbed. And so I want to interject here and talk a little bit about self-defense and survival. First of all, they're two different sciences, and they're not fighting. And so a lot of martial artists, even if you had studied martial arts, a lot of martial artists fail at these kinds of situations, because position, or sure, is really what's dictating everything. And what you found was that your position was terrible. And it was terrible because you had a lot of vulnerable people around you, and you had also potentially very dangerous people around you.
Yeah, and I didn't know where I was.
Right. And yes, so obviously that makes your position just awful, because then your wei qi becomes extremely weak and shaky, and lots of bad energy can penetrate.
Oh, they went on a vacation and they disappeared. No one's seen them after, like they just disappear.
Now, what I'm also interested in is, are there reports in Michigan of hidden towns, like either Muslim towns or Russian towns, where people, because there was a story, oh God, it was a movie or something pretty recently, and it was all about, or it might have been an X-Files, I don't remember, and it had to do with Eastern Europeans, and it just reminded me, like,
after he told Ashley that he was going to impregnate her, he told her, we're going to do some stuff to Buddy, and you just have to go along with it. And we got back to camp, and I didn't know this shit went down. Then she started breaking down, and like all the girls were uncomfortable. So I took us all, and we got in the car, and then that's when all that shit went down. All of a sudden, as we were leaving, golf carts of people started pulling up to try to convince us to stay and stuff. And we left all of our shit there, all of our stuff there, everything.
This might have been a cult. This might have been a cult.
Yeah. So they were going to do some stuff. It was on top. The house was built on top of a huge sacrificial rock. and the balcony was opening. There was a convenient opening, like, oh, he accidentally fell off the opening. It was a convenient.
Where was all this happening?
This was in New Hampshire. Wait, no, what city? What state? Oh, I can't even remember the state. I hate it so much.
I thought was this the story from a couple years ago, or is this recent?
This is the story from a couple of years ago.
Okay, I thought it was North Carolina.
No, it was by West Virginia, by Philadelphia. No, it was out there. I'll remember.
Well, I remember how much it disturbed you. I mean, it really shook you. I remember this now. It was very disturbing.
They were going to kidnap the kids and take them into sex trafficking, and I was going to be a sacrifice, and they were going to watch it. And I was certain that this was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And
so
how
did you get around the golf carts?
As we were, I just sped off. I sped off, and I had one of them in my car. I had one of their people in my car, so it worked because they were acting as a military too. Military was involved. She was military, and that was the kid's girlfriend, and the whole thing was stunk to high hell. So we got to, like, that's how I know it was his favorite spot to go, because she told us that was his favorite spot to go. She was waiting for the lost boy, so she was acting like she was waiting for the lost boy, and which was keeping us there. And we just sped off. We went to the closest town. We got there. She got in the car and she changed out of her outfit, like into like some military garb. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I'm like, whatever. I'm like, Marissa, sorry, we spun them a tale. We told them we're going here. We told them we knew military in the town. We told them we had military friends. We told them a million lies. And then we said, we're going to go stay here. Then we told them we were going to go to the coast. Then we told them a bunch of shit. And then we ended up driving right back past the houses and shit. And there was a huge fire. Something was on fire. One of their buildings was on fire. Like they were hiding something. And we fucking took off. And there was black cars, two cars that were following us on the highway, and they stopped in front of us. And I had the wherewithal to not let them pin me in. And they went 20 miles per hour on the highway. And the highway was, 70 mile per hour, 60, whatever. They stopped at 20 miles per hour, and I sped around them and just took off. And that's it. That's as far as it went. I was like, what the fuck, dude? I'm like, but if they wanted me, if they wanted us, they could have tried harder and got us, but it's because we were in the public place,
Yeah.
And then from there, I took off.
So your interest was, we were talking about dangerous people and dangerous.
And then martial artist, and then this guy,
right.
wanting
to talking, right. So the development
and then this got me into researching murder podcasts like a woman does, because you have to know how people operate and how when weird things go down, you got to know what are the red flags.
That's correct. So I recommend people to follow Fight Science and Active Self-Protection. These are at a minimum two channels to follow on YouTube. It's really important that people consider martiality, but it is a thing where development into martiality can accelerate people into the dark side. And when that happens, you see a lot of really dark things. War is the anti-mems. So if we build a society around war, like the Vikings did, it will lead towards destruction and ignorance, which is where the Vikings ended up. They ended up bereft of their own spiritual beliefs and everything, and everything that had been orally handed down for a long time. It was finally written down in the Poetic Edda, but it's not as good as it was originally. So, it's very important to utilize martial training for self-defense, survival. Those are two different sciences. The self-defense situations are typified by moment-to-moment choices, and survival situations are typified by long periods of time in which an overarching plan and strategy for long-term survival is the most important thing. And also things like shelter and fire become more important than your physical body. But you also have to be very careful not to make little grievous injuries. Self-defense situations can go run the gamut from they seem more dangerous than they are, all the way to highly dangerous, so dangerous that people don't realize, the dangers that they're in, because it can unfold so fast. And of course, that cold runs all over you, and it's very hard to think in those kinds of situations. And that's the science that I teach, and I have used and have been able to get out of sticky situations without hurting anybody or being hurt or allowing anybody that is with me to be hurt. And that positional science is not an easy thing to learn, but it is an important thing to learn. And it's an absolutely 100% important secret science. It's one of the threefold sciences. This is the secret science, and among the secret sciences, the art of war and all the war arts. Bing Fa is number one, I would say, among the secret sciences. Not that I don't love feng shui or Bazi. I love all of those kinds of secret science studies. Nick mentioned dowsing. So, I think geomancy is important, but geomancy isn't going to be so important when you're surrounded by a cult of apparently Russian paramilitary Satanists. I mean, whatever they are. So, that's why there is a MIMS paper on MIMS and Sure, because Sure is one of those things that is, if we don't get it and we don't get the change theory, I don't know that we'll ever be a success in metamorphizing. I think that nature will be the one who decides, and it'll be, like Robert says, reset and good luck. With a few people, it'll be like Mad Max, a few people with access to resources. They'll try and find people like me or any electrical engineers, and they'll try and hoard them up because we have skills. And we'll do okay, but the alphas would be running things, and alpha in nature is dangerous. I mean, we're talking not necessarily highly intelligent, but very testosterone, aggressive, big, domineering kind of guy. Aussie Man just released a video. It's really funny. It's Retro Australia. People reacting to bikinis. Now, this journalist, it's black and white. This journalist is asking people what they think about bikinis. He goes up to a woman who's obviously very scantily clad for that era. And as he's asking her, this gorilla of a man with no shirt on, obviously, just pants, walks in. He starts accosting her about it. The guy goes to say, hey, I'm conducting an interview. This gorilla of a man just grabs the mic and rips it from his hand. And then he grabs the woman's arm and says, we're going to go over here and you're going to get redressed. And that's exactly the kind of society it would be. It'd be guerrilla men telling people how to live and what to do if you don't have skills and you don't have resources and you don't have means. But if you learn the martial sciences, you can leverage, because I only have a little scholar's body, but I can hit the bag very, very hard, and I'm also incredibly dangerous. So that is one of those things that I want people to consider. But I'm more interested in pre-engineering a way to enhance the sure of the people, which means you and me, which means all of us who are talking, who are listening, to enhance us to be more able to survive mentally deranged people, aggressive alpha types. Because I'm fairly alpha, but I mean like seriously alpha, like gorilla man. Paramilitary minded and fascist minded, jackbooted, we call it, jackbooted thugs, criminals, and like gangs, terrorists, all these kinds of people that make the people, and as you mentioned, buddy, women, very, very nervous. And in a society like that, if we don't win, in a society like that, women become property again. They become assets. They become fought over. And it's a very dangerous situation. And I don't think people are taking it seriously enough because they're living their day to day, and Netflix is easy to get.
Okay, anyways, Ramone, where do you come by the study of martial arts? I mean, how did that begin?
I studied as a child, but I was taken out of it after a year. And then, so when I was 19, I gained many pounds, probably like 20 pounds in my freshman year of college. And in the summer, I was depressed, and basketball wasn't taking the weight off. I bought a Bruce Lee box set out of the bin at Walmart.
Mhm.
And I was watching it, and I became so inspired. I immediately went out and signed a 2-year contract at a Shaolin place. And I did not miss. I mean, I was a gym rat. The place stunk to high heaven with the smell of feet and sweat and who knows what else, toe fungus, whatever else in there, tinea. And I did it. And I had a little break when I was at the NSA, and it made me miss it all the more. So then I started Tai Chi. And it was just part of my spiritual journey. I was atheist at the time, so it helped me to even have a spiritual journey.
How long for the NSA?
I did a total of 1 year. It took 3 years to do, or 2.5 years to do. And then from there, I decided to quit. I gave back my top secret clearance because I wanted to be a martial arts master. And I went through some personal hell and left, and we went to Chinese medicine school. And since then, I've broadened my horizons into other things. If I had to advise anybody, if they have the opportunity to study historical European martial arts, more than any other martial arts, do that one. Because not only does it need people to carry it on, but it is the best hand-to-hand close quarter combat invented up until the age of Spec Ops. And there's nothing new under the sun, so you can get all your jiu-jitsu, everything you need out of mixed martial arts, you can get it out of the European martial arts. These were the baddest mothers that ever walked. But anyways, I didn't do that. Obviously, I did Shaolin. And now I do boxing, grappling. But more importantly, I've studied not just the art of war. Art of War is the book. The Art of War is the 101, the 301, the 401, and the PhD thesis. So people, just because you read it once doesn't mean squat. You are now more in danger than you were before. That's all it means. They need to study a lot more other texts, which I recommend the translation of the 7 military classics, plus there's a few others. And then obviously they can, of course, study Clausewitz and Alexander the Great and the Peloponnesian War. That's all good too.
The art of war
But
cover
they need to study more than Sun Tzu. They need to study all of them.
Yeah, does the art of war cover, hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that?
Not really.
No.
It mentions the use of ninjas, which they translate as spies, and it mentions the creation of not special ops, but what would you call commandos? You take 10% of your best people out of your army, and you create commandos. Of course, out of that, 10% of those you would create spec ops, and that probably did happen because they had a lot of special needs. They had needed spies who could swim and spies who could climb walls and that kind of thing. So, but in the Bunsen Shatsu or something like that, I'd have to look up the Japanese word. He's a ninja master from the late Middle Ages there, basically getting into the Renaissance and well into the Industrial Age nearly. And he says point blank that the dying of spies for 100 gold coins is ninjas. These are Chinese ninjas. So they had it back then.
Well, the assassins had the right idea, in my view.
Yes. The assassins.
Yeah. Get absolutely whacked on reefer, and then and then do a suicide hit on your target, and that's what they did basically. They were very hard to stop anyway,
Well, obviously, yeah, because there's a big difference between bravado and an actually dangerous man. There is a confidence that I can carry with me. If I'm on a bus or a train or an airplane, I'm not worried about hijacking.
Well,
I'm excited.
I'm the same, really. But I mean, I can't walk very well. I've got a bad leg, and I've always been fairly martial all my life. I'm in my 60s now. But so I carry a stick. It's got a sharp edge on it, and I can use it like a sword if I want to. But my main focus when I'm moving around, or out on the hill up there, where we get problems sometimes, I always make sure that I'm positioned correctly. Always positioned in a dominant spot. Or if I'm not, I can get one.
Do you know about the British martial art from the 1800s?
Well, I know about sort of street fighting.
No.
No.
From the Victorian era, there was a martial art that was being practiced in England, and it's alluded to in Sherlock Holmes. Have you ever seen this?
No. I'd be interested to find out though, because
it's a lost art, and you could pick it up. It's a gentleman's martial art. That's a mixture of karate, boxing, and some old things that had been somehow handed down from the age of fencing and lancing.
Yeah.
And it was a close.
I have seen that. Yeah. It shows you how to use a sword stick correctly, doesn't it? Which I played lacrosse for 20 odd years, so I can use a stick pretty well. And so I feel confident anyway.
Bartitsu.
Plus I can box. I can box effectively. The only thing I can't do is run off.
All right. Listen to this. It's an eclectic martial arts self-defense method originally developed in England in 1898 to 1902, combining elements of boxing, jiu-jitsu, cane fighting, and French kickboxing, savate. In 1903, it was immortalized by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah.
So
that'll be the London gangs who started that off down there.
Well, it was considered also a gentleman's martial art. It's striking, grappling, weapons fighting. So you may be able to find. Oh, here we go. There are a few Bartitsu schools, although I see this one's New York City. There might be something. You never know in your area. As I say.
Well, I've developed my skills as far as I need to now, I think, and you
never know. You gotta keep up your thunderbolt.
Well, of course, but it's not something I'm preoccupied with. I'm more interested in stone walling and gardening,
I got
you. These things, it comes in useful, but it helps if you've got a weapon handy as well, doesn't it? Like a shovel.
Yeah, you carry a cane, you said, right? Is it got a round head?
What do you say, Ramone?
The cane that you carry, does it have a round head?
No, it's got a handle, but it's shaped a bit like axe-like, so I can peck with it like a little bit like a hammer, a little bit like a tomahawk. But I can poke with it pretty well,
What's it made of?
Carbon fiber.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna. You need to get like a brass.
Oh, hang on. No, I know I need that, but yeah, I mean, I haven't. It's just something that I don't really see it as a weapon. I need it to walk. That's my primary function with it. But
you're a gentleman. You're the gentleman of the group, right? The bloke. Now that Gareth has abandoned us for his shores, so you never know when you need it. I had a Buddhist friend, and Buddhists particularly live in this idea that what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And he peaceful. He's a peaceful man never comes. It didn't stop the guy from pistol whipping him, even though he was going to give him his wallet and car. The guy still pistol whipped him because it's Baltimore, and these people are depraved. So when you run into a situation like Buddy ran into, unfortunately, being the best person you are doesn't always save you. You have to act.
Yeah, you got to have a gun.
You got to. Well, yeah, you're not. You don't have that opportunity.
No, we had a gun, and we definitely told them that we had a gun.
No, you did. You had it because you're in Michigan, but Nick is not in Michigan.
Right, and we also saw their guns. Well, some of them, and so it was definitely.
You don't want to be in a gun battle, but that's the thing.
I think they shied away because they also knew that we were armed.
Yeah.
Or we pretended we were. No one really knows.
Right. Of all the places I normally ever go, the one where I would like to be kept packing heat just on general principles is Baltimore. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the goofiest people I ever see, like in DC and New York, at least look like they came from this planet. At least so that nothing in DC or New York really frightens me much in daylight, at least. Baltimore, I can't say that. I mean, Baltimore, you really see people that,
Well, it's a lot like Somalia. And if anybody hasn't seen Black Hawk Down recently, to see the level that people can go to.
Okay, Somali's like average IQ was 68, right? Retarded is 70. So that you get Borko Bunga wanting to go over there to the overlords of Somalia and tell them he needs 70,000 Somalis, as part of his plan to wreck the United States, dump into Minneapolis, St. Paul, right? And, like I say, average IQ over there is 68 right now. Do you think that those guys are going to give him 70 of the ones that are above average? I don't think so. I think they can give him 70.
Unfortunate. That's another thing about the MIMS is that we need to pre-engineer and engineer away. My pre-engineering involves chess.
Okay.
And I think the engineering will involve creating the Sure JavaScript overlay. I'm relying on this young man who's over here playing with Legos. It's nothing wrong with playing with Legos. It's good. To probably be the one to create the JavaScript program, him or his brother. Actually, probably his brother, because he's the one who is such a positionalist in his own just natural way he is. And he's actually, for a child, he's programming in JavaScript. So, but this overlay would go over the chess. But to bring this to people who are struggling to develop their societies, which are South America, Africa, Polynesia, and help them to encourage that IQ. But I'm more interested in develop for the spacers, the technical IQ. And
I'm sorry, it's like I'm sort of like dead to pop culture in a number of ways. It's like you're using a word which I'm not really familiar with. What does MIMS mean exactly?
That's not pop culture. That's part of our EPMC. It means the membranous interface of material and spiritual.
The what?
A membranous interface of the material and spiritual.
Word membranous.
That means that there is something going between the spirit and the material, because there's a polarity there. The ether and our physical working world, things are going back and forth. Okay. And it's a philosophy that was birthed right out of our cosmology. And so Buddy and I used to call it futurization. And I didn't know he was so obsessed with futurization. It was something I've been considering for many years as well. And then the philosophy sort of just birthed out. You're more than welcome. Actually, tonight's show on the Leak Project, I'm going to be covering the MIMS. I've opened up the papers that I'm going to be going over with on the show tonight. By the way, Buddy, that is my show. Although I'm sure Rex appreciated you thanking him, but that show, that APM show is actually my show. He's only launching the Zoom.
Okay, yeah. Now I know. I didn't understand at first going.
No, that's okay. Yeah, but so we'll be able to come back and go anytime. Okay. I can invite anybody I like. I can invite Al Gore if I wanted to hear an insufferable prick. So it's just one of those, like, it's my show. So
sorry, could you tell me a little bit more about this thing that you were doing up in West Virginia somewhere? It's like, what were you doing in this town, wherever?
I was on my way to go pick up my my artwork from the Walter Russell Museum because I have my artwork. I had my artwork there, and it never ended up happening. I didn't pick it up.
Yeah, this was 2019, so it was just before all the world lockdown. I remember.
It happened in 2020. The shit went down in 2020.
2020? There's no way.
Okay. Yeah. And
this is just something you thought was a normal town that you were driving through, or what?
No, I met up with a person who I met at the Walter Russell Museum. So it was a fan of mine. Not only was he a fan, he became another one of my mathematicians that I was working with.
Okay.
The other mathematician I was working with ended up going AWOL as well. Totally bonkers, horrible, crazy situation.
I remember we talked about people worshiping the power of numbers. Sometimes they go crazy like that. And you're like one of the ones that stays sane. But I've seen shin disturbance among numerologists many times.
Constantly. To tread in the waters that I'm in, it requires going through the bends after receiving downloads.
Yeah, the mind bends.
So this is, I mean, it's not easy to describe to the world what the wormhole is made of. What is the rabbit hole? People talk about what's in the rabbit hole, going down the rabbit hole, but actually sketching it out, drawing it, sculpting it, creating sculptures that fit inside of sculptures and geodesics, and realizing that this is actually a quasi-crystal. Birkeland currents are emergent quasi-crystals. And
Buddy, did I ever tell you that I had been through one of those tubes in escaping an astral back to my body?
No, but I've heard this from a million people. And if you look at my podcast on Thunderbolts, you'll see person after person after person after person saying this verifies everything that I saw in my trip. This is what I saw.
I have two stories. One is that in one astral, I flew through a television screen and appeared next to a car of a guy. And then I'm embarrassed to say I gave this yoga guy, he had been giving a talk, and I saw it on a screen, and I went through the tube and appeared next to him at his car. And then I gave him my business card, which is hilarious, my acupuncture card. Anyways, when I woke up, I looked up his name. He was a real guy in Arizona, but he looked a lot stronger and bigger in astral. But the other one, it was totally different. It was like I was like in a mall, and then it came time to wake up, and then it felt like I was a gerbil squeezing through a tube, and then I got back to my body, and then I woke up. And it was a very unpleasant feeling, but it wasn't the worst feeling. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of just very cramped, thin tube. Getting back, and it was odd. It was definitely a strange experience that
Have you ever read
I had
through the book of Daniel at all?
What now?
Have you ever read through the book of Daniel, which talks about dreams? You see, dreams were the last vestige, they still are, the last vestige of this thing that I call the antediluvian communication system. Okay, dreams can still serve a useful purpose. Now, in the time of Joseph or of Daniel, they definitely were serving useful purposes. I mean, they were giving people information. It was like, you would be in an unconscious state, right? In other words, you have to be asleep for dreams to happen, at least normally, right? And I think that it's maybe a question of semantics. They talk about visions being something that you would observe while you were awake, right? You've got the story of Joseph and basically seeing like 7 fat years and 7 lean years, right? And preparing for the one with the other. That's sort of interesting, right? Now, I was looking at a thing on, this is not getting back into my thing about like perfecting the oceans again, but like there was a thing on one of the shark study station or channels on YouTube a week ago or so, about a man who had been like surfing in an area where, they just didn't see sharks. I mean, they weren't common, right? And it had been like 50 years since there'd ever been any kind of an attack by a shark there. And the guy's wife had some kind of a horrific dream like 2 days before he was going out there. Told him not to go. He said, it's just completely real. Dream like you being attacked by just some sort of a monster shark. And the guy went out there. Sure enough, what do you think happened? Now, the other thing about it, if you watch Jaws, you could easily get the impression that like a 20-foot shark was an extreme rarity. No, it's like these great whites. I mean, adult ones, fully grown, are going to be somewhere between 15 or 16 feet and 20 or 21 feet. That's normal, right? And they don't normally want to eat humans, but it often happens that they don't really know what a human is. Like, okay, let's just go chomp him up a bit and like see what happens, right? Maybe he's edible. Or it could also be that, that they're actually trying to conduct some sort of a war against humans. Now, when you read the story about the Indianapolis, 1945, I mean, that sounds like an attack. I can imagine how happy Adolf Hitler would have been, if the Allied powers had refused to acknowledge they were at war. So, just a bunch of animals, right? We need to study them,
I'm afraid Stephen King really demonized the shark with that Jaws thing. I mean, great movies and what have you. But yeah, you've got to realize that I think there are only about 3 fatal great white shark attacks a year or something like that for all the millions of people who go in the ocean.
I
So
away
The
for
big
5 seconds and back on
the
sharks somehow.
biggest problem is the quantity of ordinary fish that they consume. At any rate,
Okay, hold on. We were the call today was had a specific direction. I don't want to talk about sharks.
no, we
You
were
asked about MEMS, so I only
yeah,
gave you the
we're
first
going
one.
on about dreams, and
Oh, dreams. Okay, so
and
dreams. I think that there are a lot of cultures that have created MEMS out of dreaming. There is an entire dream kung fu. It's called Dream Gong. And it is something the Taoists practice controlling, the Tibetans have practiced controlling. I think it is an important part to practice. But there's lots of kinds, Teddy, to answer you all together. There's lots of kinds of MEMS. There's MEMS that people accidentally create. There's ones that we inherit, like free ones like prayer and meditation. Then there's MEMS that we create, like the post office, things that get us what we want, essentially.
right?
And
Hey,
the
this guy
question
said
is,
he was not going to ignore any more of his wife's tales about dreams anytime soon. You know, that was, he managed to survive the attack. You know, but he said that, like, you know, it's about as frightening as you could get.
yeah, I mean, they can be, but also though, dreams can provide insight. I mean, I had a dream in November 2011 that gave me glimpses into the future. Unfortunately, I didn't interpret it. I shared it, and nothing was done. And instead of creating a positive MEMS to fix the situation, I went through hell instead. And unfortunately, my kids went through the hell too. And you know, I don't ever want to do that again. But you know, the spiritual side does not send us emails in plain English. My son actually came up while I was muted, and he was asking if in astral form you can read books and remember them in your waking life. And yes, that actually is a thing, but it's very, very difficult to remember the text or math from a dream. Even if while you're dreaming, you can do it perfectly.
Yeah, you can also know all of the information inside of a book just by possessing it.
I think that's possible. I mean, it's a highly theoretical thing that's been proposed. I don't know if there's any data that we've proven that.
Right.
But I mean,
I'm sorry, you guys believe in the possibility of seeing into the future?
Absolutely.
Well, it's not that we're seeing into the future. Let me give you the classic example that's in the paper. You can read the whole MEMS. You can read all the MEMS papers if you like. The one I cover is that mankind did not invent powered flight until the late 1800s. But somebody was super interested to get in the air, and everybody was. And so the hot air balloon came out first.
Mm-hmm.
And it is something that we just super desired to have.
All the way. Hot air balloon in the American Civil War. That finished in 1865, didn't it? So yeah. I'm sure the the Montgolfier brothers, and I'm sure they were flying stuff up for pre-Napoleon. You know, it was absolutely vital if you're fighting against enemies who were fighting in unit formation. You know, just go up there, spot what they're doing, easy peasy. So I'm sure the use of I'd be very highly surprised if Alexander the Great wasn't using some kind of hot air balloon as well for the same purposes. You know, to arrange troops. You know, and then you look at the Nazca lines and well, they just seem to be made to be spotted from the air, don't they? From high up.
Well, I think they wanted the gods.
When you connect the lines on the globe, when you connect all the lines and draw straight lines, it all converges at a temple on the other side of the world.
Yeah, but you could do that with, it's a sphere. You could do that with almost any object. You can pick the Eiffel Tower, you can get them all to converge at the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. No, the lines are specifically drawn in a certain way in certain directions, and all of them converge at the same point on the other.
But again, you could explain that by if they're all pointing, they see something in the sky, it's a plasma shape. It's a field up in the sky. Then they make it on the Earth. Somewhere else, somebody on the sphere also sees the same event and makes a temple. Of course,
Right.
they're going to, because of perspective, they're all going to project downwards. That's mathematics.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
it doesn't mean a one world civilization is for sure.
That's projective geometry right there. A great example.
Exactly.
And then you've got Daedalus, haven't you? You've got Daedalus, the ancient Greek who could fly, made some wings, didn't he?
I would say, though, that the Nazca lines would be a very good example of a very poor MEMS. There's almost no benefit that can be seen to them at the time. Same thing with the large earthworks in Ohio. There's not a lot of benefit to them at the time. The only one I could think of that has one would be the Great Serpent Mound, where they made their Venus effigy into a calendar. But Stonehenge apparently might have been a calendar. But otherwise, there doesn't mean, so it appears that they did it entirely for the gods. And I'm not so sure that that is a good MEMS. I'm not sure that religion for the sake of just making a god happy is really a good MEMS. But I haven't done a study on it. I've only done a study on morality. And morality appears to be a very poor MEMS compared to ethics. But we don't know really, because we don't have data. And we don't know if for example, doing Teutonic runes is a good MEMS or a bad MEMS. There's a lot of Christians who believe it's bad. And then there are some excellent stories you hear firsthand of kids playing Ouija board and it turns bad. But that doesn't necessarily prove that the Ouija board is a bad MEMS. It probably is, but we don't know for sure because we don't have any data. We're doing a lot of guessing. Here we are, 2022, and we're guessing everything. So MEMS is a philosophy where we want to include the power of numbers through data and evidence and empiricism in order to improve the philosophy. That's what differentiates it, Teddy, from other philosophies. It's not, I don't even list my top 3 philosophies of the world, but if it ain't in the top 3, it's definitely number 4. Because it's been gifted to us. It's something any of us can do. We can all create, and I have a paper, How to Create a MEMS, because it's something that we already do. Everybody has a dream right now. Buddy was plugging about, and there's no, by the way, I'm not offended about it, by the way, Buddy, but he wants people to freeze dry food, and it's a business for him. It's a wonderful MEMS that it came to him, and he's going to make a whole talk about it. So it's really beneficial.
I'd like to
he
hear.
feels strongly
When
about
you get to that one, try to get my attention somehow or other. Okay.
What now?
When you get to the thing about freeze drying food, try to get my attention.
Well, he already mentioned it. We have an episode. You can find it. It's either on GeoView or on this channel's on this Rumble account for the Pulse.
Yeah.
Buddy did a very fantastic show. I think he talked a good 45 minutes to an hour about the benefits of it. But the point is, he stumbled. I don't know if he stumbled, but he definitely partially stumbled, at least, into that, and it is changing his life, and it's benefiting his family, and it's benefiting society. And
I quit my day job. I'm an artist, and I entered the culinary world, and Grandma's Space Kitchen is what swirled out, and it's incredible. It's people can't get enough. They love it, and it's the only reason I started doing it was for emergency food prep. And
Okay. Have you made
it's wonderful MEMS. It's wonderful MEMS. Wonderful. Whereas the crypto firm turned out to not be so wonderful. I had 1 month where I made a good 10,000, but it only works on the upswing. And obviously crypto's sliding. And I don't have enough confidence in crypto as a technology as it currently stands to give anybody any advice except stay away. So I decided to close crypto firm, and I've moved on to a different type of MEMS, which is a drop shipping based business. But there are lots of kinds of MEMS people come up with. I've seen people, even in Ayurveda, there are people who cook gemstones and then eat crystals.
Okay,
So there's lots of ways that people, and there's that whole ormus, people obsessed with ormus, even though it could kill them.
Right, Ramone, let me ask you a couple more stupid questions about MEMS, right? It's like, is the concept something you guys have invented amongst yourselves, or is this something that was there before you got to it?
Well, I think it was inside of each of us. Nick is doing his own MEMSical work that he's been doing not only on his hill, but he has software.
Again, like,
but the
he's
philosophy was
origin of-
birthed out of the cosmology.
okay,
Yeah.
what does MEM stand for again?
Membranous interface of material and spiritual.
Okay, could you spell that first word for me? Membrane?
Membrane, OUS. Membrane.
Membranous? Okay.
Yeah, membranous.
Okay, like a membrane between the spiritual world and the physical world that we live in.
That's right. That's right. Between the ether and the physical.
Membranous interface between
The material and spiritual.
material
Now,
and
you know, what's interesting is Buddy will approach that geometrically, but I have a more of a, what would you call, a synthetic or a syncretic way of, I like to combine. So I'm interested in, you know, if somebody builds a toothpick bow and arrow, I don't know why they would do it that way, but if it results in a bow and arrow that's stronger than a compound bow, Buddy might be interested in the geometry of it. I'm probably more interested in the structural meaning and why their mind went there to create the matchstick compound bow. But it doesn't matter to me specifically what the MEMS is. I do think that there are some definite anti-MEMS, chemical warfare, you know, like VX gas. There's no way that it enhances life or the environment in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't exist for a positive anything.
Right,
So
right. Don't need-
if an anti-MEMS exists, then there must be MEMS. And if MEMS are created, then there must be also a lot of anti-MEMS. And my biggest concern is that government is probably the worst MEMS ever created, and it's probably slipping into anti-MEMS territory at this point. Probably because people are worshiping it, or seem to be worshiping government. Or maybe it's just authority. I don't know what they're worshiping, but they're not worshiping God if they're worshiping something else.
Right. Okay, another question about like food preservation, right? Have you looked into the difference between irradiation and what you were talking about a moment ago? I'm sorry, I'm bad with words.
Freeze drying.
Freeze drying, right? Irradiation versus freeze drying. Have you looked into that at all, or if you had somebody ask you like which is better or which is preferable?
If you're talking about dehydrating versus freeze drying,
Mm-hmm.
dehydrating shelf life only has tops 5 years. And
Yeah, not dehydrating. I'm talking irradiation, right? Just killing every possible germ inside some sort of a plastic bag that holds whatever. I don't think it would have to be dried.
I've never heard of that.
I mean, it's a known technology. It's like my understanding is that what I've heard is that
I don't see how that would keep it from degrading. I mean, just because there's not bacteria doesn't mean the chemicals aren't going to be bombarded, but it may. I don't know. I don't honestly know.
I
I
haven't
won't
heard of
fancy
that.
eating it.
I've never heard of
You
that.
don't want to eat
technology.
it? He doesn't want to eat it.
I can't comment on that because I haven't heard of that technology yet. I mean, I think I know what you're talking about, where they run water underneath. Like if you're a water plant, they run it under a UV light or something.
I don't know. No, you're talking about something like nuclear radiation. Honest to God, right? It's like, and I've read about this in the past, and it seems to have just gone away. Right? The government didn't like it, or somebody with the power to kill it didn't like it.
Yeah, I've heard about that, Ted. I think they used to irradiate the lettuce and stuff that's got a very short shelf life.
Okay.
They'd stick it on a plane and they'd process it with sort of a UV to kill any bugs off and
So
UV
this
and
is
radiation, I think.
This is a good case study. Let's compare these two MEMS. The reason I favor buddies is that if there is a negative connotation, and whether it's right or not, people are afraid of radiation. Whether or not they understand it is a separate issue. It's how many people. Now, if you believe that it's better for nature, the human species, to thin the DNA to only the smart people and the ones who are physically capable of surviving, probably it's good for fewer people to know how to preserve food. But if you believe, as many of us do, that that we should be enable the most people to do well, then Buddy's method is going to be superior on account of more people are going to be willing to do it themselves, not only to buy it and eat it, but to do it for themselves.
It sounds like, but what Buddy's talking about sounds like it would be substantially easier to get into and to cheaper. I mean,
I would assume so. I would assume so.
What
So
I've done
of two MIMS, one is a better MIMS. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm assuming right now at this point that, like, I mean, our here in the United States at least, our food infrastructure is under attack. It's like you've had about 70 of these major types of food processing and distribution plants which have been burned down or blown up or had airplanes fly into them. I mean, this is not a coincidence. I mean, I don't believe in coincidences to that extent. You've got Joe Biden forbidding the use of the rail lines to haul nitrogen fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, right, just as the spring planting season starts. And that's insane, right? I mean, you cannot haul chemical fertilizers with trucks. It's like, it's way too heavy. Trucks go uphill and downhill and, and around bends, and, it's like you have to stop and start, and it's just no reason, you can haul fertilizer with trucks, right? But it's not
12-ton bags.
I'm sorry?
12-ton bags. Well, that's what they are over here, 12-ton bags, the fertilizer.
Okay, whatever the hell it is, it's like, it's not cost effective. You can't, economically, you can't haul fertilizer in trucks. So what I've done, I mean, I don't think that my own needs for food are any different from those of rich people, right? So I would say even rich people need to be storing food at this point. I mean, just be able to go for a year without walking into a grocery store, because I think, we may really be coming to a place where, I mean, grocery stores, they may not shut down altogether, but I mean, you could have lots and lots and lots of empty shelves sitting there. Things that you would expect to be there may not be there for a while. It's like, I think this is coming. It's like we're looking at holy hell here starting like in about 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, this is a fact. That's a huge fact. That's just what's
Right.
going on.
That's
So,
exactly.
like
I think these shootings, by the way, are totally orchestrated or encouraged. And it may be MK Ultra. It may be direct MK Ultra. It may be MK Ultra by proxy. It doesn't really matter. It's still crazy people doing crazy things because somebody is instigating them. There's too much similarity. There's self-similarity within them.
I have to say something. So my daughter came up to vacation at our family property, and if she hadn't came up to the property, she would have been at that shooting, because she lives in Chicago and that's where they were going to go.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a little too close to home. And her pastor, she was going to a Catholic school for 6 months, just interim between schools. And her pastor was at the shooting, and I met the pastor.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Where was this?
Well, I was just saying it's sad. I mean, there should have been more
Chicago.
people.
The latest shooting on 4th of July was in Chicago. It just happened, and yeah, so it was at the fireworks show.
Normal Chicago weekend stuff. Was it big, more than that?
Oh, it was more than that.
It was a shooting on July 4th.
It was, yeah. It was
some crackpot with a machine gun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's all over the news. The guy had 5 different guns.
Once again, a state that is anti-Second Amendment and a crowd full of people who are not armed become easy fodder for people who are filled up with the dark side. Yeah. And nature has been telling us this from the caveman days. There's nothing new about it.
Yeah.
And so, but once again, people have fancy ideas. And then nature says no. That's the difference between Mims philosophy and just the random philosophies that people come up with. All the woke stuff. They come up with this stuff, and it's pure theory. right? They just make it up. Some of them don't even have degrees. I mean, it's just made up stuff. And then they encounter nature. They blame nature instead of blaming their bad ideas. And that's something we can't allow in a MIMS philosophy because we're based in rationalism, empiricism, and data. So, you know, when you see situations like this, it's nature speaking to you and saying, look, don't create situations where a dark individual can prey on lots of people and without anyone being able to stop them.
Okay,
You know,
don't protect the dark individuals when they're up to this kind of shit.
I
right?
agree. But nobody could predict it. This kid was 18 to 20 years old. He was not old enough for anyone to know.
They raise these individuals, indoctrinate these individuals, and a lot of the time they're connected directly to the CIA.
It's very possible. He's only 18 to 20, so it
Well,
may be.
it looked a bit like his mind had been broken. The way, you know,
Yes.
I suppose he'd be dressing up kind of weird, and it looked like his mind had been totally cracked, didn't it?
Yeah, he's in that age when they go through, potentially young men can go through a psychotic breakdown, a schizophrenic breakdown. And he might be just extra susceptible to whatever energy is floating around. 5G, alien, satanic, it doesn't really matter, does it? If it's a foreign energy to his body.
It's probably
it's
fit
breaking
someone's
down
purpose, though. It was probably encouraged somehow, wasn't it?
In some way. He was rapping about something he had to do, and he felt he had to do it, and there was no way to stop it. It was like a wave that was approaching him. So in some way he was being controlled. But you know, I don't really know how. And we probably will never know because they started to talk about it, and the police were like, "No, it's all under investigation." We'll never know. So if it was a false flag, we won't know. If it was MK Ultra, we won't know.
Yeah, look, one thing I would tell people, look, it's like, you know, you've had like numerous of these events, including riots, including this thing up here, like in the little town in Texas. You know, it's not that far from where I live, right? You know, where the cops are being told to stand down and being ordered to stand down when these things go down, right? It's like the cops were sitting there on their asses for like, you know, like almost a whole hour before anybody ever moved. You know, like this little town is called Uvalde, right, in Texas. Yeah, like
it's a very famous town now.
They killed about 20 people, right? And
yeah.
You know, what I think you need to do, and there was definitely ordered, right? The chief of police, I don't know who he was taking orders from, but these things tend to occur like in blue areas, you know, Demo-poop controlled, you know, towns and cities. And, you know, I think what you need to do anywhere in the United States, if you're serious about it, is just, have the mayor, you know, of the city inform, you know, read some kind of a riot act to the police, inform them like any evidence I ever see of, you know, police standing down. You've got something like that going on. It's like, I don't care who gave the order from the top. Could be Joe Biden, could be Bork Obonga, right? Could be anybody. And like, you know, but it's like the police, you know, the chief of police would be immediately fired. And everybody else involved in that, anybody who's obeying orders to stand down will be held to pay. You know, that's
right. Well, so in that vein, I've opened up here strategic intelligence. I'll download some of these and put them out. So let's just take a look at some of the things Jim Rickards, who uses data, following the thing what he's been posting about. Is the Fed actually broke? Nuclear war, yeah, and not just gas. Threat of surging oil prices. By the way, natural gas prices up 700%. Let's see here. Virus control bank runs.
This is on purpose. This is completely on purpose for us to
we're getting there.
Lose our minds.
How to make your home your personal fortress. Let's see. The Fed's digital dollar almost here. China killing its own economy. So it's not just a bank run that's all by accident, but that they're actually resetting. Of course, he's here to sell some gold. It's understandable. Trip around the world to prepare for a global synchronized slowdown. S2 Underground is also talking about all these like infrastructure burnings. They have a new video out. I recommend people to check out the new S2 Underground. It's about 3 days old. Very important. I'm going to watch it today. Germany goes to red alert. Putin and BRICS discuss a new reserve currency. All right. So when that happens, the U.S. will not be able to afford its loans. Okay. It wouldn't certainly be. They're going to keep funding the stupid military empire. But that's why they're doing it, is to try and crush the military empire of the United States and to end classical liberalism around the world, because there are philosophies around the world that hate classical liberalism, right? They hate freedom, equality, liberty, right? The right to bear arms, the right to property, the right to live your own life. There are several philosophies, one, of course, being Islamic based in Sharia. That's those two things are anathema to each other. Communism, which is what Buddy mentioned. Fascism, obviously. Fascists hate classical liberalism. The monarchs and the oligarchs, right? They believe that they should be in each of the oligarchs thinks that they should be, whether they're a billionaire or a Russian oligarch, they all think that they should be the monarch. It's amazing. 8 billion people, and these people think I should be the one running everything. Bill Gates thinks he should be able to run everything. The guy can't even run his own life. You know, it's just.
I'm the richest, so I've got to tell everyone else how to live.
Right, right. So this is the problem with creating the Spacer Society. Here we are. We were at the cusp of leaving stage 1 to go to stage 2, or leave phase 1 to go to phase 2, but still stage 1. And we're already slipping back into neo-feudalism. We're already having neo-fascism. And the fascists have made friends this time around. Isn't that funny? Now, they're not going to agree with each other when when the Constitution fails and it all cripples, right? And the people applaud for the end of the Republic. They're not going to get along anymore. And the Muslim Brotherhood, they're the ones sitting back and waiting for all the dust to settle. That's very smart, because they just want to their plan is to outbreed long term. So this battle for the world of ideas, empiricism itself is on the chopping block. Rationalism, math, logic, these things are on the chopping block. And the fact that we all talking about it are white guys only convinces the opposite side that we're the problem. That's the amazing thing about it. And so tribalism rears its ugly head. And all this is happening concurrently. And I feel that it is no way that it is complete coincidence, whether it's agenda or synchronicity, I can't say. But there's no way it's a complete coincidence that it's happening while the planet's busy undergoing this rapid shift. And the star, by the way, is acting funny. I mean, it's brighter. I don't know about you guys. I do remember. I'm old enough to remember when it was yellow. I remember.
Ramone, not only is it brighter, but I've been hanging out with all these festival people, and everybody's saying they have to drink like 3 times more water than they've ever had to drink, and they're constantly dehydrated. So it's probably hotter. I don't know.
Yes, and the Earth's spinning faster than it ever has before.
And it is spinning faster. That's correct.
Really?
Yeah, yep. It's by milliseconds, but it's still increasing and it's accelerating.
Wow.
Energy is being added to the system. Now, where that source of energy is coming from, it turns out Ben Davidson's wrong. We haven't had a continual flare, as the sheet as we move through. That's not happened. But he's probably right in that the environment overall, depending on where you are in the bend of the Milky Way, that's probably going to be different. There's probably going to be a polar relationship when you're on the up bend versus the down bend. And I'm not sure where we are. Nick, do you know? Are we on the down bend now, or are we?
We're just passed from the down bend, and we're heading back up, I think.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I think that might have been 2012, but I'm not sure.
Well, if we're going to join our galactic neighborhood, or even our stellar neighborhood, and be sane, considered a sane species in the neighborhood, and not, just some alien civilization soap opera, we're going to have to really seriously develop ourselves.
That's right.
I think developing TIQ is probably more key. I know that the other side appears to think that their EQ should be either infantile or like everyone's EQ is so perfect that no one ever offends anyone. That's not possible. Okay. The woman I was just in a relationship with, she had the highest EQ among people that I know. And of course, it was constantly upsetting people because she's a Taurus. So, it's just like, I don't know that it's possible to develop EQ and not ruin society. I have no idea. But TIQ, I think we could develop TIQ, and people's technical abilities and their ability to solve problems can keep them from becoming violent ne'er-do-wells. That's my conjecture. That's my hypothesis.
Okay.
But we need the MIMS to do it. We need to make philosophies and data systems and software to actually back this stuff up, which we all are. I mean, everyone on the call, and probably all of our listeners, are all the kinds of people who are responsible and want to be the change they see in the world. And I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you doing this. We're going to be wrapping up the show, but I want to open up, give you guys the final thoughts before I hit the stop record.
Well, I'd just like to say, well, thanks everybody. Always nice to chat with you guys, and we covered a variety of stuff, but we haven't spoken for a few days, so I'm sure we'll settle back down to specifics pretty soon. See you later, anyway. Cheers.
Cheers.
Always
Buddy,
a good talk, guys.
Yeah,
Always
good talk.
All set.
Absolutely.
Talk probably Wednesday? The Wednesday? This isn't the Wednesday.
Well, I'll be on call. I'll be on call on the call tonight. Did you want to co-host? I'm going to be covering the MIMS. If you're not busy.
I'd love to.
Okay, I'll get you the link when it's provided to me.
Awesome.
Okay,
Cool.
Teddy, any closing thoughts about the status of the world and the shift?
The only closing thought, well, the status of the world, you can read. It's like the best place to read it is like that I've come up with is a website which is called the Vineyard of the Saker, and I think it's just like SAKER is a type of a hawk, right? It's the Vineyard of the Saker. You can find that on Google, right? I think it's just like saker.com or something like that. But I mean, that's extremely good. That's like a Russian website. And, I think you're getting real information about whatever's going on in the Ukraine there. I mean, the way that this story is being presented in Western media is just complete and total garbage.
Of course.
The narrative which is being promulgated in the West is total garbage. I believe it's motivated more than anything else just by the degree of criminality, Western leaders with involving Ukraine just being as like a world epicenter for major transnational gangsterism, which it has been since 2014 when they had that color revolution. Okay. Got these 75 biowar laboratories. We've got like just no end of bullshit sitting there. The other thing I've been doing lately, the big project has been finishing, and this I have to really get psyched for. I cannot approach this on a 9-to-5 basis. It's that latest, this new revision of this book, and on the internet that's called the word "the" has to be there. www.theGanymedehypothesis.com. Ganymede is Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. It's one of the 4 or 5 Galilean moons. So Jupiter has about 75 or 80 smaller moons. Okay. But nonetheless, this is my own approach to something similar to what you see on Thunderbolts, which is like a history of our own solar system.
Well, I promise you this, Teddy. What we'll do is we'll have a debate. It's going to be lively, but we'll get Robert, myself, Rick, and we'll have a good debate about that. We'll push on all of that. But of course, glad for you to plug your book, the GanymedeHypothesis.com. And I want to thank you for showing up again for this 3-hour show. And I want to thank the audience as well. Please, forward around, let people know about our Rumble. Obviously, we left YouTube for a reason. I might load this up to YouTube for old time's sake. I don't know. We didn't talk too much about the coof, so there's a good chance we won't be over censored.
YouTube to me is for amusement. Okay, it's like it's not for anything serious. It's like if I just want to do something brain dead and just watch something, be entertained. It's like you go to YouTube, right? That's all I use it for.
Yeah, they definitely don't. But unfortunately, it is where the audience is still. But this whole episode in its raw will go up on Rumble. And again, I gotta go make lunch, but I'm gonna hit the stop record.
The geometric view is love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen. Thank you for being here for episode 67 of the Geometric View. We'll see you back next week.
Life for the cause. Love, life, live it to the fullest. Life is eternal, hope and thirsty. 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 wall, eyes all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the edifice embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There's nothing to do. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism, need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, zero in your back, air in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary Christian neuron synapses, and narrow entrance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, meters even neater, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be is a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, into the ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curve and cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best. Could be micro actor, Mackie normal, open-minded, itsy bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption. Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did it go? We don't got about a girl, but about a not about a guy to spirit. Get up, what's up? Get out, tap girls. Little books up. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang. give up, never give up, never give up, never give up.